Chapter 120. Lin Xian's Fire Phoenix spiritual stove gave his companions a big surprise, but he himself was not so comfortable. The stronger the spiritual stove, the stronger the backlash. Kai Er's spiritual stove of samsara was the best proof. Although Lin Xian's Fire Phoenix spiritual stove could not be compared to the spiritual stove of samsara, it was still a rank 1 spiritual stove. It would evolve along with Lin Xian's strength. After the return of the Fire Phoenix, Lin Xian felt as if all the spiritual energy in his body had been sucked dry in an instant. The intense burning sensation made his whole body heat up, and he hurriedly sat down cross-legged, concentrating on resisting the burning of the heart flame. This heart flame was burning from the inside out. One could only imagine the taste of it. Moreover, this burning would last for a full 12 hours. In itself, it wouldn't cause too much harm to Lin Xian, and could even increase his affinity with the fire element, tempering his body. However, the pain of this process was extremely intense. If he could endure for 12 hours, he would probably lose a layer of skin. However, Lin Xian's current state of mind was very good. This was the first time he tried using the Fire Phoenix spiritual stove. He did not expect it to be so powerful. Even though he was suffering from a strong backlash, his heart was still filled with ecstasy. As the saying goes, people are in high spirits when they encounter happy event. In this state, he felt that the pain was not as intense. With the Fire Phoenix's powerful attack, it gave Long Haochen and the others enough time to breathe. With Yiting's help, Long Haochen's spiritual power and stamina were quickly recovering. Although the Zombie King was sent flying out of the mountainside, Long Haochen's perception still followed it, feeling the changes after it was attacked. Long Haochen was pleasantly surprised to find that the power of the Fire Phoenix released by Lin Xian was extraordinary. The Zombie King's wings were directly burned and there were many serious burns on its body. The injuries were not light. Moreover, the Fire Phoenix did not only attack a single target, it also had an area of effect. Among the elite zombies in the area, the Iron Zombie and Copper Zombie couldn't hold on and were turned into ashes. Although the Gold and Silver Zombies fared better, there were still different parts of their bodies that had melted. This was a true magician with super high damage. Long Haochen was slightly better. As the leader of the team, even if he was excited, he would not show it. However, Han Yu could not help but laugh out loud. "Brother Yao, you've finally exploded. You really make me want to cry." Lin Xian fiercely glared at him, full of disdain, thinking to himself, "Are you crying now?" Why was he smiling so happily? However, the backlash from the spiritual stove made him unable to speak at all. He could only use his eyes to take revenge. Roar! At this moment, suddenly, a shrill roar was heard. The zombies that were charging towards the mountainside without fear of death suddenly stopped when they heard the roar and did not continue to jump forward. The one who let out the roar was the Zombie King, who had been severely injured. It seemed to be enraged and felt the fear of the fatal threat. Most importantly, its target was not these humans. If it could not destroy the evolving Haoyue, it would definitely be punished by the Undead Monarch Council. It could vaguely feel that Haoyue's evolution was almost complete. The Zombie King did not charge towards the mountainside anymore. Instead, he suddenly turned around and with a roar, he suddenly spat a thick, dark green mist at his zombie minions. No matter what kind of zombie it was, it would immediately melt like snow in the mist after coming into contact with it. The elite zombies with some intelligence scattered in all directions when they saw the Zombie King spitting out the mist. On the other hand, ordinary zombies did not have any intelligence and could only turn into corpse water under the mist. The corpse water was like a stream, flowing towards the Zombie King. As the number of zombies that came into contact with the dark green mist increased, the area it covered also kept increasing. The corpse water that flowed to the Zombie King's feet would immediately fuse with its body and repair the damage on its body at a crazy speed. What was more terrifying was that its body was also growing rapidly as the corpse water fused with it. Although Wang Yuanyuan and Han Yu did not have strong senses like Long Haochen, they could still see the thick, dark green mist and the zombie king's growling. They could clearly see it. Both of them looked at Long Haochen at the same time, their eyes filled with questions. Long Haochen turned his head and looked into the depths of the cave. Hao Yue's breathing seemed to be getting heavier. It was obvious that it was a critical moment. On the other hand, the zombie king was fusing with its zombie minions to increase its strength. Even if it was a natural counter, once its strength was above the 9th tier, Long Haochen and the rest might not be able to withstand a single blow. Lin Xian's Fire Phoenix obviously could not be used a second time. He definitely could not allow it to complete its strength increase. At this moment, even a slight hesitation could lead to the annihilation of the entire team. With a flash of golden light, another figure appeared beside him. It was Kai Er, who had been waiting for a long time in the Tower of Eternity. Previously, Long Haochen did not summon Kai Er to his side because he needed her help to defend and not attack. Now it was time for a strong attack. Kai Er, follow me and stop the zombie from gathering its strength. Han Yu Yuanyuan, guard the cave entrance. As Long Haochen spoke, he had already rushed out. The 4 wings on his back flapped with all his might, and he went straight for the zombie king. The dazzling golden light rose to the extreme in an instant. It was like a golden sun that appeared in front of the zombie king in an instant. At the same time that Long Haochen rushed out, Yiting's body also flashed with a golden light and disappeared into thin air. When she reappeared, she was behind Long Haochen. When Long Haochen flew out, the brilliant holy shield had already been kept back into the eternal melody. At this moment, he held holy retribution with both hands and infused it with all his internal spiritual power. The holy sword skill of holy retribution instantly increased to the extreme. The thick white incandescence was filled with sharp killing intent. What was even more shocking was that Long Haochen's body actually showed the same white incandescence as the holy sword. Even the 4 wings on his back were the same. Wherever the thick white light passed, the thick dark green fog in the air was quickly purified. The zombie king clearly felt a fatal threat. With a furious roar, a pair of incomparably thick arms smashed down at Long Haochen. In the process of continuously absorbing the corpse water, its body became bigger and bigger. The terrifying power even caused a series of sonic booms as it swung its arms. It could be seen how terrifying its strength was. Long Haochen didn't clash head-on with it. He used the 9 dragon steps and his figure flashed to the side. At the same time, he held holy retribution with both hands and raised it above his head. Yiting's body swayed and actually turned into a golden stream of light that landed on holy retribution. Suddenly, the incandescent holy retribution actually emitted a layer of dark golden flames. However, holy retribution also let out a low buzzing sound as if it was lamenting. Even with its radiance-grade material, it seemed to be unable to withstand the dark golden flames. After missing its attack, the zombie king instantly turned around and was faced with a brazen heavy sword slashing down. When the sword slashed down, Long Haochen's entire body seemed to be slightly distorted. Wang Yuanyuan and Han Yu, who had slashed down from the mountainside, only felt as if a ray of light had appeared in this dark world. The rich aura of light seemed to purify the entire space. Boom! Holy retribution slashed down on the zombie king's raised arms. Amidst a violent roar, a terrifying scene appeared. Holy retribution, an extremely high-quality heavy sword with the ability to absorb souls, was actually shattered just like that. Long Haochen was also sent flying by the terrifying power of the zombie king. However, the zombie king didn't feel good either. After the violent collision, there was a teeth-numbing pft sound, as if boiling oil had been poured on ice. One could clearly see that the zombie king's arms, which were as hard as steel and had extremely terrifying power, were actually melting. Intense dark golden flames almost instantly engulfed the zombie king's body. The surrounding thick green fog that came into contact with the flames almost instantly dissipated, no longer able to devour the ordinary zombies in the distance. What was even more terrifying was that the dark golden flames could actually increase on their own, quickly spreading throughout the zombie king's body. Roar! A mournful roar came from the zombie king's mouth. It frantically slapped the dark golden flames on its body, trying to extinguish them. It even continuously spat out dark green liquid on the flames. However, no matter what it did, it only made the dark golden flames burn more places. Although Long Houchen seemed to have suffered a great loss in that attack, he still managed to stain a bit of the dark golden flames on the zombie king's forehead. Even if it wanted to cut off its arm, it couldn't do so. Long Houchen fell to the ground in the distance, blood spurting out of his mouth. His arms hung limply by his side, obviously dislocated. Blood flowed from the webbing between his thumb and forefinger. It looked very miserable. However, not a single zombie dared to come up and attack him. After the light retribution shattered, Yiting once again revealed her true form and floated next to Long Houchen. Her face was also very pale, showing how much energy she had expended in that attack. After becoming a chosen, Long Houchen obtained some special abilities that belonged to a chosen. These abilities were all related to the goddess of light. Previously, his ability to turn his body incandescent was called spirit burning. It burned his spiritual energy and soul to give himself the greatest boost. In fact, this skill was even more powerful than his original sacrifice skill. However, the side effects of spirit burning were also great. After using it once, Long Houchen would be weak for at least 7 days. If he used it too much, it would even cause his own strength to greatly decrease and even endanger his life. The dark golden flames were actually an evolved ability that belonged to Yiting. After she obtained her true form, she didn't change the special characteristics of her energy body. She could transform herself into the purest and densest light element and fuse with any of Long Houchen's weapons. She would temporarily become the weapon's weapon spirit and ignite the weapon's most basic power to attack. In other words, a weapon would be destroyed after using it once, unless its quality was high enough to accommodate a weapon spirit of Yiting's level. Long Houchen knew that with his current cultivation, it would be impossible for him to defeat the Zombie King. The Zombie King was most afraid of his attributes, not his combat ability. Thus, he relied on spirit burning and Yiting's help to raise his light attribute to the limit. Even if the real goddess of light was here, the light element she controlled would not be any purer than Long Houchen's attack. Although the Zombie King was powerful, in the face of this absolute suppression of attributes, it still suffered irreparable damage. It wasn't its body that was heavily injured, but its soul. A pitch-black figure silently appeared in the air above the Zombie King's head. Immediately afterward, a monstrous killing intent mixed with a gray light flashed by. An instant later, the black figure strangely split into two. One stopped in midair and slowly dissipated, while the other landed next to Long Houchen like a bolt of lightning. It quickly pushed his arm back to its original position. "How are you able to use the spiritual stove of samsara?" Long Houchen cried out in alarm. The Zombie King had already fallen into a daze. It no longer roared or struggled. Then, it slowly collapsed to the ground. The dark golden flames had lost their resistance and quickly spread across its entire body. The Zombie King was worthy of its title as an undead monarch. Even though its spirit fire had already been extinguished, its body did not immediately turn to ash. Instead, it continued to burn. The zombies in the distance lost their king and felt the terrifying light. They no longer had the will to fight and scattered in all directions. Kair helped Long Houchen stand up. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Long Houchen carefully looked at her and said in a low voice, "Which sense did you lose this time?" Kair giggled and said, "I didn't lose any sense." "Wait, who is she?" As she spoke, she turned to Yiting, who was floating next to Long Houchen, and asked, "Who is she?" To Long Houchen's surprise, Yiting obediently came forward and said, "Mistress, I'm Yiting, Master's light elemental spirit. After Master's spiritual stove fusion, my energy body materialized and became like this." Kair was shocked and said, "You're Yiting?" Kair looked at Kair and then at Long Houchen. Her expression was obviously unhappy. Although Long Houchen had expected this situation, he did not expect it to happen so quickly. He quickly changed the topic and said, "Is the Zombie King dead?" Kair nodded and said, "My spiritual stove of samsara is the best at purging these kinds of souls. It is extremely harmful to undead creatures. Moreover, it was baptized by your holy flame. Its soul was already heavily injured." After being summoned by Long Houchen, Kair immediately became invisible and followed Long Houchen, waiting for an opportunity. When she saw Long Houchen's body burn with white light, she understood that he had a way to deal with the Zombie King, which was why she did not act immediately. When the Zombie King was heavily injured by Long Houchen's holy flame, Kair activated the spiritual stove of samsara and combined it with the sword of samsara to deal a fatal blow to the Zombie King, completely extinguishing its soul fire. No matter how strong its physical body was, a Zombie King that had lost its soul would become a Zombie King. Without the threat of the Zombie King, the two of them returned to the cave halfway up the mountain. Han Yu treated Long Houchen's injuries, but the weakness brought about by the spirit-burning realm could not be cured. They would have to wait for 7 days. Only then did Long Houchen have the time to tell everyone what had happened. "I never expected Haoyue to be born in a place like this." Wang Yuanyuan sighed. It was impossible for her to have a good impression of this world, which was full of poisonous gas and undead creatures. Kair frowned and said, "Long Houchen, what if more undead creatures attack us and we can't hold them off?" Everyone knew that the Eternal Melody's teleportation would take some time, and they all had similar questions in their hearts, but they did not dare to ask them. Kair, however, had no such qualms. This was related to their next mission and their safety. If something went wrong, their lives would be in danger. This was especially true since everyone was not in a good state. Lin Xian had suffered from the backlash from the spiritual stove of samsara, and Long Houchen had suffered from the spirit-burning realm's backlash. Both of them had lost most of their ability to fight. If they only relied on Kair's group of 3, they would be completely wiped out if an expert like the Zombie King appeared, unless Kair used the spiritual stove of samsara to its fullest potential. Long Houchen said in a low voice, "If more powerful undead creatures appear, then we will have no choice but to end Haoyue's evolution. Don't worry, I have the ability to forcefully activate the Eternal Melody and teleport us back to the Tower of Eternity." Everyone sighed in relief when they heard this. It was good that they had a backup plan. At the same time, they couldn't help but admire Long Houchen's meticulousness. Long Houchen said, "It seems that everyone's newly obtained spiritual stove of samsara has gained quite a bit of power. Let's hurry up and tell each other about it. Otherwise, it will affect our overall combat strength and teamwork." Everyone has seen Yiting's evolution. She can now speak, and she can fight on her own. She is equivalent to a light element sorcerer, and she can even attach herself to my weapon to attack at a critical moment. It's just that she has to sacrifice that weapon as the price. This kind of attack will also consume Yiting's original light force, and it will take some time to replenish it. Yiting's huge role on the battlefield was clearly seen by everyone except Kai. Although her evolution was largely accidental, a large part of it was due to the increase of Fantasy Paradise and the awakening of Long Houchen's God-favored constitution. But now, she could definitely be called a level 1 spiritual stove. And she was unique. Perhaps Yiting's direct attack and instantaneous attack power couldn't be compared to other level 1 spiritual stoves, but don't forget that the more powerful the spiritual stove, the more powerful the backlash. But what backlash did Yiting have? For Long Houchen, she didn't have any backlash at all, and there was no doubt about her growth. She would definitely evolve along with Long Houchen's growth. Kai seemed to have thought it through. She looked at Yiting, who was sitting at the side with a pale face, trying to absorb some of the light elements in this world. She slowly nodded and said, Yiting's evolution will be very useful to our team. In the future, it is equivalent to us having another light element sorcerer and priest. Long Houchen said, What about you? What ability did you evolve after your spiritual stove fusion? You endured so much pain at that time, and it was the fusion of 3 spiritual stoves, so the increase should be not small. When Kair heard him mention her spiritual stove fusion, her pretty face immediately turned red, and she couldn't help but recall the embarrassing scene at that time. She fiercely glared at him and said, You have seen my spiritual stove fusion ability just now. You saw it. Long Houchen looked at her doubtfully. Kair nodded and said, My situation is a little special. Rather than saying that it was the fusion of 3 spiritual stoves, it would be better to say that the spiritual stove of samsara swallowed the other 2 spiritual stoves and completed its evolution. I can now use the power of the spiritual stove of samsara once a day without suffering any backlash. This is because the spiritual stove I obtained in Dream Paradise is the spiritual stove of True Shadow, which can allow my phantom to possess real attack power. After the fusion, when I use the spiritual stove of samsara for the first time every day to activate the sword of samsara, I only need to use the shadow clone technique at the same time to bear the backlash of the spiritual stove for me. After the fusion, the spiritual stove of samsara can also allow me to use the 1000 strikes spiritual stove attack method through the sword of samsara once a day. After hearing Kair's explanation, everyone couldn't help but let out a series of gasps, including Long Houchen. It seemed that after the fusion of 3 spiritual stoves, Kair didn't have much of an increase. She only had her original abilities. However, in reality, the increase in her strength was quite terrifying. As the number 1 spiritual stove in the world, how terrifying would it be without any backlash? Moreover, she could use the Sword of Samsara to activate the 1000 Strikes spiritual stove attack method. In other words, Kai-Er could use the Sword of Samsara twice a day without suffering any backlash. The Sword of Samsara was a real artifact. Moreover, it was the number 1 artifact in the Temple of Assassins. Apart from the Son of Samsara back then, no one had been able to fully unleash its power. Even Long Houchen, who had awakened and become a god's favored, didn't dare to say that he could block an attack from Kai-Er's Sword of Samsara. In terms of overall strength, Kai-Er was no longer comparable to Long Houchen. However, after the fusion of 3 spiritual stoves, her explosive power was undoubtedly the strongest in the team. Surprisingly, after Kai-Er finished speaking, she didn't sit next to Long Houchen. Instead, she walked to the side. Wang Yuanyuan and Han Yu's expressions suddenly became a little strange. In their opinion, Kai-Er should be jealous. However, Long Houchen knew that wasn't the case. Kai-Er was embarrassed because of what happened at the spiritual stove fusion in the Dream Temple. He couldn't persuade her. When he thought of what he saw and touched. Han Yu, what about you? Long Houchen shook his head forcefully to get rid of the thoughts in his mind, and changed the topic. Han Yu said, The fusion of my 2 spiritual stoves is going well. I have a skill called Light's Blessing. After using it, it will release a light elemental shield with a diameter of 5 meters. The defensive power of this shield is equivalent to 3 times his own spiritual power, which is equivalent to the defensive strength of his divine block. At the same time, during the process of casting the protection of light, the spiritual power of others within the range will recover at a rate 10 times faster than normal until they are completely restored to their peak. Long Houchen's eyes lit up. This ability is great. Wang Yuanyuan also nodded. With this ability, our team's spiritual power recovery ability will greatly increase. Han Yu smiled. Actually, the best part is that it doesn't backfire. It suits me very well. Otherwise, everyone will be like Lin Xin after using the spiritual stove's ability. Long Houchen smiled. I just don't know what the ability will be after Sima and Ing Er's spiritual stove fusion. It's a pity that Yuan didn't have another spiritual stove to fuse with. Wang Yuan snorted. Leader, you're like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Have you ever seen a demon hunt squad where every member has a spiritual stove? We're already very lucky this time. Don't be discontented. And we've all advanced to rank 6. After this time, we can really apply for general level monster hunters. We'll definitely advance to general level in the shortest time. Han Yu smiled. It should be. Our luck is really good. We also got a lot of merit points this time. After going back, we can rest for a while. There's no need to rush to accept missions. Let's first increase our spiritual power to 5,000 in the 4th and 5th levels of the Tower of Eternity, then we can pass the 6th level. In fact, according to their overall strength, they could have passed the 6th level long ago. But in order to better improve everyone's combat power, they had been challenging the Red Skeleton in the Tower of Eternity alone. Now that Long Houchen had become a god's oracle, his strength had increased greatly. In a one-on-one situation, he should be able to defeat the Red Skeleton. Just as they were talking, suddenly, Long Houchen turned his head and looked towards the distant horizon. He then shouted without hesitation, Quick, go to Haoyue's side in the cave. We need to leave immediately. Just as he was speaking, an extremely terrifying pressure slowly came from afar, and it was growing stronger at an alarming rate. It was as though dark clouds were pressing down on the city. Be decisive, or you'll be in trouble. Long Houchen was the first to feel the presence of this terrifying aura, and immediately made a decision. They had to leave, otherwise they would definitely die. The owner of this terrifying aura was at least a rank 9 powerhouse, and it was aimed at them. Even if it meant that Haoyue couldn't complete his evolution, they couldn't care less. Everyone trusted Long Houchen. Kair helped Long Houchen up, while Han Yu helped Lin Xin. The 5 of them quickly ran towards the depths of the cave where Haoyue was. At the same time, the Eternal Melody's golden light shone from Long Houchen's chest. He hadn't mentioned the price of forcefully using the Eternal Melody before, but he would suffer a backlash from the Eternal Melody. Not only would the spirit-burning realm be weakened for a longer period of time, but he would also suffer a considerable amount of pain. At the same time, the Tower of Eternity would lose a large amount of energy, and he would need souls to replenish it. Of course, because the Eternal Melody had absorbed a large amount of soul energy on the Southgard Pass battlefield, it was able to support this forceful teleportation. Haoyue itself seemed to sense the threat, and its body trembled violently. Immediately afterwards, a strange scene occurred. There were originally 2 bulges on each side of its body, but the one on the left suddenly shrank down, while the one on the right suddenly grew and trembled violently. Just as Long Houchen and the others were about to reach it, the bulge on the right suddenly burst open, and another head popped out. At the same time, Haoyue's body also began to rapidly expand, and in the blink of an eye, it was more than 9 meters long. It was truly a colossal creature. At this moment, outside the cave, a dark blue ball of light was flying towards the cave like a meteor. As it got closer, its size became more and more terrifying. It left a trail of dark blue flames in its wake. After Haoyue's 4th head popped out, it appeared to be abnormally weak. All 4 of its heads drooped to the ground and closed their eyes. Haoyue and Long Houchen were telepathically connected, and it had obviously sensed what Long Houchen wanted to do. It forcefully broke through the 4th head, but the bulge on the other side had also shrunk by at least half. Otherwise, it was very likely that a 5th head would have appeared. Golden light shone brightly, illuminating the entire cave. The dense light instantly enveloped everyone's bodies. At the same time, Han Yu also released his spiritual cauldron of light, and a layer of golden light enveloped everyone's bodies. With a flash of golden light, everyone disappeared from the cave. 3 seconds later, the enormous dark blue ball of light descended. The terrifying explosion caused the world of red and black to tremble violently. The mountain had disappeared, and all that was left was a massive crater. Golden light flashed. Long Houchen and the others appeared outside the Tower of Eternity together with Haoyue. Long Houchen let out a cry and spat out another mouthful of blood. He immediately fainted in Kai Er's arms. Haoyue also fell into a coma. Fortunately, the effect of the eternal melody was still there, and the wraiths outside the Tower of Eternity did not dare to approach. Kai supported Long Houchen, while Han Yu and Wang Yuanyuan dragged Haoyue, and everyone returned to the Tower of Eternity. Long Houchen was too tired. Since entering Dream Paradise, his nerves had been in a state of high tension. After a series of fierce battles, the awakening of the Blessed Constitution, the battle against the rank 8 Zombie King, the first time he used his spirit-burning ability, Light's Punishment, and finally, he used all his strength to forcibly activate the eternal melody to teleport. It could be said that for several days, he had not really rested. At this time, his body had reached its limit, and fainting was not a bad thing for him. If this continued, he would overdraft his life force. The only good news was that Chen had already woken up in the Tower of Eternity and was waiting here blankly. Sima Xian was still in a coma. The effect of Han Yu's light's protection was still in effect, and it was not disturbed by the teleportation. Everyone's spiritual power was recovering at an alarming rate, and soon returned to normal. Even the original problem of the Tower of Eternity, not being able to recover spiritual power other than the light attribute, did not affect the ability of this spiritual stove. As expected of a synthetic spiritual stove. This time, Long Houchen's coma lasted for a full 12 hours before he woke up, and he still looked very weak. However, they could not continue to stay here, in case someone from the Temple of the Priests came looking for them. If they disappeared for a short period of time, it could be explained as wandering around the city, but it would not work if they disappeared for too long. Of course, to return to the Southern Guard Pass itself had to go through a troublesome process. Long Houchen and Haoyue had to first return to the space where Haoyue evolved, and then return to the Southern Guard Pass through the blood contract between the two. He went back, and then used the Tower of Eternity to teleport his companions out. Haoyue recovered very quickly, at least much faster than the weak Long Houchen. Long Houchen also understood what happened to Haoyue through the spiritual connection. It turned out that Haoyue had swallowed a large number of magic crystals during this time, which caused the spiritual power in its body to continue to increase, but it was very heterogeneous. Although it had reached the level where it could evolve, the heterogeneous spiritual power still needed to be purified. This purification process could only be carried out in its original space. This was also the reason why Haoyue left for a longer time this time. After returning to its own space, Haoyue dug a cave to cultivate on its own. Since it was not a direct breakthrough, it did not need to worry about being discovered by the undead creatures. With the lesson from the time when there were 3, its strength had increased again. This time, Haoyue was full of energy, and was prepared to wait until it had completely purified all its spiritual power and was extremely close to a breakthrough before evolving. However, plans could not keep up with changes. Just as Haoyue continued to purify its spiritual power, Long Houchen's constitution as a god's favored awakened. His awakening did not matter, but Haoyue, who had a blood contract with him, was immediately affected. Under normal circumstances, this effect would naturally be a good thing, as it could improve Haoyue's strength to a certain extent, especially Light's. However, because Haoyue was purifying its spiritual power, it was very close to evolving. This sudden increase immediately put Haoyue in a dangerous state of evolution. Originally, Haoyue tried to suppress it, because it was very clear that its spiritual power had not been completely purified, and the time needed to evolve at this time was too long. The undead creatures would not give it such time. However, after trying to suppress it for a period of time, it could not suppress it because it had accumulated too much spiritual power in its body, and it began to evolve. At this time, it had no choice but to seek help from Long Houchen, and could only hope that the undead creatures would come a little slower. The final result was obviously not satisfactory. Long Houchen had no choice but to activate the eternal melody to teleport back, and if Haoyue, who was in the process of evolution, left its space, it was very likely that its life would be in danger. In desperation, it could only give up on the overall evolution, and chose to evolve only half of it, using the purified spiritual power to evolve its fourth head. At the same time, it completely gave up on the impure spiritual power, which was also the reason why it was so weak and the other side of its body had shrunk. But no matter what, Haoyue's evolution was still half completed, and Long Houchen named its fourth head Xiaolan. With this evolution, Haoyue's 4 heads were slightly different from before, and the protrusions on each head had a certain change. Some were like antlers, some were like bull horns, and the 4 heads were different. The most peculiar was the newly born Xiaolan, whose lizard-like head had a protrusion that looked very similar to a butterfly. Moreover, it was unknown if it was because of the forceful breakthrough, but its eyes looked rather weak, as if it was malnourished. Chapter 121. Following the completion of the forced evolution, the scales on Haoyue's body had become thicker, faintly emitting a layer of dark purple luster. The tip of his thick and long tail had also grown a conical protrusion. Just by lying there, Haoyue released a faint deterrent force. According to Long Houchen's estimation, Haoyue had already entered the 6th grade. Moreover, it was a 4-elemental 6th grade. Little Blue's element was water. Haoyue, will there be undead creatures waiting for us over there? Long Houchen asked Haoyue. Haoyue's 4 heads closed their eyes at the same time. After a moment, they opened their eyes and shook their head at Long Houchen. At the same time, Long Houchen also felt Haoyue's anger. Haoyue's anger was quite violent, even Long Houchen felt a trace of fear. Haoyue's anger also contained a strong sense of contempt and humiliation. He despised the undead creatures and felt humiliated because they threatened his life. Long Houchen rubbed Light's head and smiled. Don't be angry. When we become stronger in the future, we won't be afraid of them. This time, it's all my fault. If it wasn't for the sudden awakening of my physique, we wouldn't have brought so much trouble to you. Haoyue's anger quickly calmed down under Long Houchen's consolation. His 4 heads moved closer to him and gently rubbed against him. His gaze also became gentle again. Since there is no danger over there, let's go. Long Houchen and Haoyue activated the eternal melody and returned to the place where they left. When the golden light flashed and their vision became clear again, Long Houchen couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He and Haoyue appeared in a pit that was more than 30 meters deep and hundreds of meters wide. Their surroundings were horribly scorched black. The original mountain and cave were completely gone. However, just like what Haoyue felt before, there were no more undead creatures here. Haoyue raised its 4 heads at the same time, and an invisible pressure spread from its body. Roar! The 4 heads let out a loud roar at the same time. It was as if they were venting their emotions and saying, I will be back. Purple light flashed and enveloped it and Long Houchen's body. The contract teleportation was activated, and they reappeared in the basement of the priest temple. Long Houchen didn't dare to be negligent and sent all his companions back from the Tower of Eternity. After doing this, he could finally heave a sigh of relief. This trip to the Southern Defense Pass could be said to be extremely thrilling. Whether it was Long Houchen himself or the 21st General-level monster hunters, they had all encountered an unprecedented crisis. It was even more dangerous than when they entered the depths of the demons to carry out their mission in the Wailing Howl of Terror Cave. However, at the same time, their harvest this time was also huge. Not only did he obtain merit points, but he also obtained a spiritual stove. Everyone had their own spiritual stove. Apart from Wang Yuan, the others had also completed the spiritual stove synthesis. Sima Xian finally woke up on the third day after returning. Although his injuries were serious, he finally recovered under the treatment of Han Yu and Yiting. This guy gave his synthesized spiritual stove a domineering name, the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder. Chun Ing-er's synthesized spiritual stove was called the spiritual stove of time. The power of the two spiritual stoves had their own characteristics, and they were both extremely powerful existences. As for their power, it would be revealed in the future battles. After this battle, the 21st General Level Monster Hunters' overall strength had completely increased to the Commander level. Moreover, they were quite powerful Commander level. A large number of the Alliance's reinforcements finally arrived, and it was announced that the Southern Defense Pass crisis had been completely resolved. The demon army had long since retreated. On the surface, it seemed that the demons had suffered a great loss this time, and several demon god heirs had lost their lives. But was that really the case? At the very least, Long Haochen didn't think so. This was obvious from the agreement he had made with Yi Xiaolei. As for what exactly the agreement was, even his teammates didn't know. "Commander Long, are you there?" A knock on the door startled Long Haochen, who had been thinking about all sorts of things that had happened in Dream Paradise. After 7 days of rest, his condition had basically returned to normal, and the feeling of weakness brought about by the spirit-burning realm had also disappeared. Long Haochen opened the door and welcomed Zhang Fangfang in. "Brother Zhang, there's no need to be so polite. You are my senior, so just call me by my name," Long Haochen said with a smile. Zhang Fangfang sat down on the sofa and said with a smile, "All right, then I'll call you Haochen." "Haochen, what do you plan on doing next?" Long Haochen shook his head and said, "We plan on returning to the Holy City to rest for a while. You should know that we've gained quite a bit this time. But because some of our abilities are new, we still need some time to get used to each other before we can unleash our full potential. At the same time, we plan on returning to the Holy Alliance to advance to Commander-tier monster hunters. We'll need to take on some more difficult missions." Zhang Fangfang didn't hide the envy in his heart. "You guys are the most talented monster hunters I've ever seen. If I had a choice, I would be willing to be like Han Yu and become your knight attendant." Long Haochen chuckled. "Brother Zhang, you must be joking. Now that you've successfully advanced to the 7th Order, your team has also gained some merit points. Advancing to Commander tier should be easy. By the way, I heard that when members of the team reach a higher level, they'll receive a reduction in merit points when they advance to Monster Hunters." Zhang Fangfang laughed bitterly. "That's right. When it comes to bad luck, no one can compare to our team. I don't even dare hope to use merit points to advance anymore. Fortunately, thanks to you guys, I was able to break through the bottleneck and advance to the 7th Order. Finally, I can advance to the Commander tier. Long Haochen, I won't say thank you. If you need our help in the future, just say the word. As long as it's within our means, I won't refuse." "All right." Long Haochen didn't stand on ceremony and agreed. It was normal for monster hunters to help each other. Zhang Fangfang said, "Since you guys are returning to the Holy City, why don't we set off together? We're going back to advance as well." "All right. Let's go together tomorrow?" After receiving Long Haochen's affirmation, Zhang Fangfang was obviously very happy. After chatting for a while, he took his leave. Long Haochen closed the door and Kai, who had been cultivating in the inner room, came out. She smiled and said, "Did you see it?" Long Haochen was stunned. "Tell what?" Kai giggled. "This Zhang Fangfang has taken a fancy to Uehara. Don't tell me you can't tell." "Ah!" Long Haochen was stunned. "You mean Big Brother Zhang and Uehara? That's impossible. Have you forgotten? Uehara once said something like that." Kai would only show such a rich expression in front of Long Haochen. She made a face at him and said, Can you believe those words? It's obvious that Uehara doesn't like those guys in our group. Don't be fooled by her and Ing-er's stubbornness. They're just good friends. After our battle in the Southern Guard Pass, you were seriously injured and unconscious. I accidentally overheard Ing-er asking about Yang Wenjiao from another group. Long Houchen suddenly said, "So that's how it is. We can't do anything about this, so let's just let nature take its course. It's fine as long as they like it." Kai suddenly said, "In the future, unless there are special circumstances, don't let Yiting reveal her true form. She has to be a smaller version like before." Long Houchen smiled bitterly and said, "I was afraid you would misunderstand, so I didn't tell you before." Kai giggled and said, "Misunderstand what? She's an elemental spirit. Even if she has a physical body, she's still an energy body. Why would I misunderstand her?" Long Houchen was surprised and said, "Then why did you let her shrink?" Kai said, "That's not the same. She's dressed so skimpily and you always look at her. You've learned bad things." Long Houchen laughed and said, "Then you should dress like that for me to see. I don't think you've learned bad things, right?" "Bah, you've really learned bad things." Kai dodged the instant before Long Houchen reached out to hug her. Ever since that charming scene occurred in the illusory paradise, Kai had been unwilling to share a bed with Long Houchen these past few days. At most, the two of them would sit on the bed and practice. Long Houchen didn't force it. He even didn't dare to hug Kai and sleep on the bed like before. What happened that day made them realize that they were no longer children. Although they loved each other, they still didn't have a status. Long Houchen was afraid of hurting Kai, and Kai was shy. As for how long this situation would last, they didn't know. It wasn't just Long Houchen and Zhang Fangfang's monster hunters that returned to the sacred city. Lu Shi's general level 22 monster hunters, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi's monster hunters all returned together as if it was planned. In this way, on the way back, several monster hunters could be said to be scattered. Lin Xian eagerly ran to Lu Shi's side to accompany Lin Xian. But Long Houchen's team had two more uninvited guests, Zhang Fangfang and Yang Wenjiao. Zhang Fangfang was steady, sincere, and honest. He didn't say much and just followed Wang Yuanyuan every day. No matter how Wang Yuanyuan chased him away or annoyed him, he just smiled and followed her silently. In the end, Wang Yuanyuan didn't say anything. She just let him follow her. Yang Wenjiao also seemed to have made up his mind to pester Chen Inger. He was much more attentive than Zhang Fangfang. He often sent some delicious food and fun things to Chen Inger. Although Chen Inger was harsh to him, she was willing to accept the things he sent. It was rare for Long Houchen and Kai to enjoy the relaxed atmosphere on the way back. Long Houchen didn't restrict his companions. He knew very well that when they returned to the holy city, they would have to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. It was rare for them to relax. He also had a plan for his future actions, but he didn't need to tell his companions yet. Although they didn't walk too fast on the way back, they still returned to the holy city after 15 days. Long Houchen even gave his companions an extra 3 days to rest. On the morning of the 4th day, he called everyone to the hall on the first floor of the villa. "It's so comfortable. It would be great if I could stay like this forever." Lin Xian lay on the wide sofa and praised with a satisfied expression. His beautiful hair was gone, and he looked much more neat. Some dark green stubble had grown out, and he looked a little like he was wearing a green hat. Sima Xian chuckled and said, "There's medicine. Brother, did you take your medicine today?" Lin Xian's expression immediately stiffened. "You're the one who took your medicine, you bald fool." Chen Inger and Wang Yuanyuan couldn't help but giggle. Han Yu said, "All right, stop fooling around. Captain, what should we do next?" Although he was only Long Houchen's retainer knight, his strength was among the best in the group. Moreover, he was the oldest in the group. After getting rid of his arrogance, he became much calmer. He understood the true meaning of guardian knight. Long Houchen smiled and said, "We encountered many dangers on this trip to the southern Guard Pass, but with everyone's hard work, the harvest was very good. However, we've all just obtained or synthesized spiritual stoves, so we still need time to get used to each other. We have to continue our training in the Tower of Eternity. First, everyone should increase your internal spiritual energy to the upper limit of 5,000. Next, we will try to see if we can completely pass the remaining checkpoints on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Hopefully, there will be a way to help us directly increase our spiritual energy. After we break through the remaining checkpoints on the first floor, I believe everyone's abilities will be more or less in sync. Then, we will advance to the general rank and continue to complete new missions." Everyone listened to Long Houchen and nodded. It could be said that the past year was the fastest year of their cultivation. Especially in the Tower of Eternity, the speed of their spiritual energy increase could be described as leaps and bounds. If it wasn't for the process of training there, it would be impossible for their spiritual energy to increase to 4,000 in such a short period of time, let alone break through to the 6th rank. One must know that the average age of the 6th rank in the Alliance was 37 years old, and the average age of the 21st general rank monster hunters was less than 20 years old. Based on this speed of cultivation, with the advantage of age, they would definitely become the 8th rank. As for whether they could break through the bottleneck of the 9th rank, no one could say for sure. But with their talent, the bottleneck of the 9th rank might not be able to trap them. If everyone has no objections, then, we will prepare to enter the Tower of Eternity to train. Long Houchen slowly stood up, the smile on his face gradually disappeared, turning into a solemn expression. "Leader, wait a moment. Saint Knight Master wants you to look for him today." Han Yu said to Long Houchen. "Ah? Grandmaster is looking for me? Do you know what it is?" Long Houchen asked doubtfully. Han Yu chuckled and said, "It should be something good. Didn't we contribute 5 magic crystals of the heaven-defying Demon Dragon Clan to the Priest Temple and the Alliance? Grandpa should be rewarding us with merit points, right? After all, they can't just take our things for free." "Reward merit points?" Upon hearing this, Lin Xian immediately jumped up from the sofa, his eyes wide open, and his pupils seemed to have turned into the shape of gold coins. Han Yu said unhappily, "Look at you. Do you know how many merit points can be exchanged for the magic crystals of the heaven-defying Demon Dragon Clan?" Lin Xian rubbed his hands and laughed. "Even if I don't know, I can guess a little. That's the magic crystal of a 9th rank magic beast, and the race of the Demon Emperor. No matter what, one should be exchanged for 100,000 merit points. Looks like we're not far from having legendary equipment. 100,000? It can't be that much, right?" This time, even Long Houchen was tempted. Lin Xian puffed out his chest. "Why not? That's a 9th rank magic crystal, boss. If you don't believe me, you can try to sell one. This thing was a rare and good thing. 100,000 merit points is still too little." Sima Xian laughed foolishly. "Then we contributed 5. Doesn't that mean we have 500,000 merit points? That's great." Long Houchen was also a little impatient. "Don't get your hopes too high. Although the Alliance doesn't know that I brought you into illusory paradise, Kyra and I also completed the spiritual stove fusion inside, and obtained a lot of benefits. They may not give us that many rewards. Lin Xian, you just mentioned the 9th rank magic crystal. That reminds me. How about this, you, Yuan, and Sima, the 3 of you go to the trade center and do 2 things. One is to find a suitable spatial crystal for Yuan to embed in her divine soul shield. If there are any, consider using magic crystals or merit points to buy it. The other is to find a master alchemist and ask if they can exchange the heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal for one of Sima's vigorous light pills." Hearing him say this, Wang Yuan and Sima Xian's eyes couldn't help but light up. Especially Sima Xian, his vigorous light pill could definitely be used to replace the internal magic crystal. Although Wang Yuanyuan was hopeful, her kind of spatial crystal was indeed difficult to find, but there were many good things in the Monster Hunters Trade Center. Maybe they could really find it. Chen Ying-er excitedly said, I'll go too, I'll go too. Han Yu smiled. Leader, then I'll follow you to Grandpa's place with the vice leader. Alright, then let's split up. The 7 of them split up. Long Haochen and the other 2 went to the Sanctuary Alliance's administration hall, while Lin Xin and the other 3 went straight to the Monster Hunters Trade Center. 2 hours later, Lin Xin, Chen Ying-er, Sima Xian, and Wang Yuanyuan returned to the villa with some depression. As soon as they entered the door, they saw Long Haochen, Kai-er, and Han Yu sitting on the sofa waiting for them. Moreover, the 3 of them didn't look too good. As a result, the atmosphere in the hall was a little gloomy. Seeing Lin Xin and the other 3 return, Long Haochen raised his head and said gloomily, How is it? Lin Xin said helplessly, Let them say it themselves. Sima Xian smiled bitterly and said, I have a chance. The master alchemist of the mission center said that if the core of the vigor ball of light is changed to the heaven-defying demon dragon's demonic crystal, it can at least be upgraded to the level of a legendary weapon. However, simply adding a demonic crystal won't do. There must be a metal that can conduct spiritual power and many other rare materials. Not including the money given to the master alchemist, it will cost about 100,000 merit points. This number is simply too frightening. Even an excellent piece of legendary equipment would only cost around 100,000 or 200,000 merit points. Long Haochen turned to look at Wang Yuanyuan and said, What about you? Wang Yuanyuan shook her head and said, The trade center doesn't have my empty silver crystal. I heard that the Sanctuary Alliance Grand Auction seemed to have one. However, it must be sky-high. At least 1,000,000 gold coins. Where do we have that much money? On the side, Chen Ying-er muttered. He really left in high spirits and returned disappointed. At first, I thought we had some confidence, but now it seems that it is far from enough. Leader, let's accept more missions. The stronger we are, the more merit points we need to upgrade our equipment. Long Haochen looked at Lin Xin non-committally. Lin Xin, come here. As he said that, he took out the merit point token on his left arm. Lin Xin walked in front of him and stuck the merit point token on it. A faint golden light flashed, and the two completed the transaction of merit point. At first, Lin Xion's expression was still dejected, but very quickly, his dejection became rigid, and his pair of eyes that weren't small to begin with quickly widened, while his mouth muttered something. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wang Yuanyuan was puzzled and asked, What are you doing, Brother Yao? Do you have to count the merit points that the leader passed to you? Don't disturb me, I am counting the zeros. Lin Xion's words shocked everyone. He needed to count zeros? What kind of number was that? 6 zeros. How much is that? After the merit points were transferred, Lin Xian raised his head and looked at his companions in a daze. He asked a very stupid question. Sima Xian said subconsciously, 100,000? How did you learn to count? Did you learn it from a priest? That's 1 million, okay? Chen Ying-er said disdainfully. 1 million? When those 3 words came out of her mouth, Lin Xian, Sima Xian, and Wang Yuanyuan were instantly petrified. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became strange. Sima Xian said hoarsely, Boss, did you rob the Monster Hunters Mission Center? 1 million merit points. Heavens! There was no doubt that to them, this was an astronomical number. Long Haochen smiled bitterly. Rob? I also need to have that kind of strength. Lin Xian still had a look of disbelief on his face. Boss, are you saying that this 1 million merit points really belongs to us? That the Holy Knight Elder gave us a reward? Long Haochen nodded silently. A sly smile finally appeared on his face. Beside him, Han Yu and Kai also smiled in unison. Obviously, the gloomy atmosphere from before was deliberately faked. In other words, they were also digesting the surprise brought about by the 1,000,000 merit point. No, it was ecstasy. An ear-piercing scream suddenly sounded in the villa. Lin Xian was the first to cheer. Immediately after, Wang Yuanyuan and Chen Ying immediately burst out screaming like a young girl. Sima Xian grabbed Lin Xian's hand with a silly smile and kissed his merit token. 1,000,000, this is 1,000,000 merit points. Heavens, how can there be so many? Boss, tell us quickly, how can there be so many? This is too inconceivable. Lin Xian couldn't care less about kicking Sima Xian anymore. He took a step forward and rushed to Long Haochen's side, full of excitement and curiosity. Han Yu smiled and said, "The heaven-defying demon dragons are the Demon Emperor's clan. All along, the heaven-defying demon dragons have been very concerned about their demonic crystals. Even if our alliance obtains it, they will definitely retaliate and want to snatch it back. Therefore, the demonic crystals of the heaven-defying demon dragons are considered to be an emperor-level mission in our monster hunters. Every time we obtain one, the reward is as high as 300,000 merit point. This time, we obtained 10 in one go. It can be said that it was completely due to luck and the captain's flexibility. After a discussion, the higher-ups of the Alliance decided to exchange the 5 demonic crystals we took out for 1,000,000 merit point. Now we still have 5. In other words, our total assets are as high as 2.5 million merit point. 2.5? So be it. Lin Xian laughed maniacally. His cheers once again resounded throughout the villa. Even Kai couldn't help but grab Long Haochen's arm in excitement. Even now, she and Long Haochen still felt like they were in a dream. It had to be known that they were still Captain-grade monster hunters. 4 Captain-grade monster hunters, completing a mission for 10 or 20,000 merit points was already a lot. If they kept completing Captain-grade missions, they probably wouldn't be able to earn 2,000,000 merit points even after 30 years. But now, such a huge amount of wealth was right in front of them. Merit points weren't gold coins, but they were much more useful. With so many merit points, it meant that their strength would definitely be reborn. Long Haochen laughed and said, "Sima, don't be stingy. I reckon that after your vigor pill of light is enhanced, its power will definitely surpass that of ordinary legendary equipment. Fortunately, we'll use the best materials. Later, I'll have Lin Xian accompany you to find that master alchemist. We'll start recasting it now. Yuan, go to the Sanctuary Alliance auction house and ask about the empty silver crystal. Find out when it'll be auctioned. No matter how much it costs, we'll buy it for you. If I remember correctly, in the Holy City, items in the Great Auction House can be purchased with merit points. The price is 10 to 1. In other words, we should be able to spend around 100,000 to 200,000 merit points to buy an empty silver crystal for you. If there are more empty silver crystals, we'll buy them all." Lin Xian chuckled and said, "Boss, you're really rich. What about the rest of the merit points?" Long Haochen thought for a moment and said, "We'll keep the rest of the merit points for now. If there's anything good at the Great Auction House, we can also buy it. Right now, the first thing we need to do is to strengthen your elixir. You can decide what materials you need. We won't be able to reach the level of King-tier monster hunters for now. When we become General-tier monster hunters, we'll go to the 3rd floor of the Monster Hunters Trade Center to take a look. We'll try to use the merit points we have to buy everyone a piece of legendary equipment. That way, we'll have a higher chance of completing the mission." Long live the captain! The cheers rang out for the 3rd time. Every general-tier monster hunters had a piece of legendary equipment. Even monster hunters couldn't imagine this. Many king-tier monster hunters might not even have a piece of legendary equipment each. In fact, Long Haochen knew very well that they were able to obtain so many merit points this time because of the Alliance's help. Although he had obtained the 10 heaven-defying demon dragons' magical crystals, if there hadn't been so many Temple League powerhouses, would he have been able to do so? Therefore, handing over 5 magical crystals was completely reasonable. Now that the Alliance had converted all 5 magical crystals into merit points, it might seem like they were giving them 500,000 less, but it was already a great help to them. That was 1,000,000 merit points. Even if it wasn't enough to buy each of them a piece of legendary equipment, it wouldn't be too far off. With this 1,000,000 merit points, they could at least stay in the villa and train hard for a year. They wouldn't have to go out to complete missions. What Long Houchen didn't know was that the Alliance had given them so many merit points so that they wouldn't have to go out to complete missions as much as possible. The Son of Light and the Reincarnation Saintess were too sensitive. This was especially so after Long Houchen had been in mortal danger twice during the trip to the Southern Guard Pass. Han Q was also afraid. If Long Houchen or Kai died before they could mature, it would be a fatal blow to the Temple League. Therefore, with so many merit points, they naturally didn't need to rush out to complete missions. With these merit points, they could further increase their strength. This was the Alliance's tendency to nurture them with resources. The other monster hunters couldn't even dream of getting it. It could be said that the other 5 members of the 21st General Level Monster Hunters were all basking in the light of Long Houchen and Kai. Everyone went to do their own things. In the following month, they spent part of their time in the Tower of Eternity and the rest of their time cultivating their spiritual energy. Sima Xian's ball of light had been sent to be forged. According to the Grand Auction House, Wang Yuanyuan's empty silver crystal would be auctioned soon. During this month, Long Houchen and Kai are mainly focused on adapting to their new spiritual stoves and cooperating with each other while cultivating their spiritual energy. Apart from Long Houchen, the others had also increased their spiritual energy to 5,000 in the 4th and 5th stages of the Tower of Eternity. As a result, the cultivation of all the 21st General Level Monster Hunters had increased to more than 5,000 internal spiritual energy. Leader, the empty silver crystal is going to be auctioned tomorrow. Should I go with Yuan, or should we all go together? Lin Xian came to Long Houchen and Kai Er's room and asked. Long Houchen thought for a moment and said, "Let's go together. If we encounter something that everyone needs, we can just auction it. We haven't been to the auction house for a long time. Everyone has been working hard this month. Just take it as going out to relax." Okay. The Holy Alliance Grand Auction House in the Holy City was undoubtedly one of the largest auction houses in the entire Alliance. If the Monster Hunters Trading Center was the place with the most treasures in the entire Alliance, then the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House was the place with the second most treasures in the Alliance, and anyone had the right to buy them. Sometimes, things that weren't available in the Monster Hunters Trading Center would be available here. More importantly, there was no class restriction in the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House, and anyone had the right to buy treasures of any level. It wasn't possible in the Monster Hunters Trading Center. Only when one reached the corresponding level of Monster Hunters could they buy better things. After all, the prices of all the items in the Monster Hunters Trading Center were extremely low. To give a simple example, Long Houchen's group had a top-quality heaven-defying demonic dragon's demonic crystal. Completing a mission in the mission tower would earn them 300,000 contribution points as a reward, but in a situation where it was available, they could purchase it from the Demon Hunt Tower's trading center for 350,000 contribution points. However, if it was sold at the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House, the starting price would probably exceed 5 million gold coins, and the final transaction price would likely exceed 10 million gold coins. That was the difference in value between the two sides. Therefore, in general, unless it was a situation like the Monster Hunters Trading Center, which didn't have it, and the auction house had it, demon hunters rarely went to the auction house to buy things. Lin Xian was a regular at the auction house, and he had already prepared his ticket. When Long Houchen and the others arrived at the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House, the sky outside was already dark. However, there were many people entering the auction house. Lin Xian led everyone into the auction house, and as he walked, he said to Long Houchen, "Today is the monthly auction. Good things will appear at this time. I looked at the auction list, and there are quite a few things that we might be interested in. Boss, I have a suggestion." "Go ahead," said Long Houchen. Lin Xian said, "We still have 4 of the heaven-defying Devil Dragon's mana crystals. From the point of view of maximizing profits, we shouldn't use our contribution points to buy what we want here. That would be a huge loss. Why don't we take advantage of today's auction to sell a magical crystal? We didn't buy the magical crystal from the trading center, and selling it at the auction house doesn't violate the rules of the monster hunters. With the gold coins from selling the magical crystal, it would be enough to support today's auction." Long Houchen's heart skipped a beat. He knew that according to the rules of the monster hunters, equipment and medicine purchased from the Monster Hunters Trading Center could only be sold to the Monster Hunters Mission Center if they wanted to. Lin Xian's suggestion was undoubtedly very good. The magical crystal of the heaven-defying demonic dragon came from the demons, and they didn't buy it. If they could really sell it at a high price, then they would be able to buy enough good things in the auction house. Perhaps they could solve the lack of merit points for everyone to purchase a piece of legendary equipment. After stopping in his tracks, Long Houchen asked his partners for their opinions, and finally agreed with Lin Xian's suggestion. Because it was a grand event that happened once a month, today's auction was also held in the largest hall of the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House. Anyone who participated in today's auction had to have at least 1 million worth of transactions with the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House. However, even so, when Long Houchen and the others entered the auction hall, they were still shocked. In the dimly lit hall, there were at least 700 to 800 people sitting, and the number was constantly rising. Many of them wore masks specially provided by the auction house to hide their faces. After all, it was very likely to offend people in the process of participating in the auction. Lin Xian brought them to the front row, but he didn't have a private room here. Long Houchen and the others sat down in the third row. Out of caution, Long Houchen and the others also put on the masks issued by the auction house. Lin Xian took a magical crystal of the heaven-defying demonic dragon from Long Houchen to participate in the auction. Generally speaking, the auction house wouldn't accept any more auction items before the start of the auction. However, it also depended on what it was. The magical crystal of the heaven-defying demonic dragon was something that they probably couldn't wait to invite. Moreover, Lin Xian had always had a good relationship with the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House. Kai gently leaned on Long Houchen's shoulder and slowly closed her eyes. Long Houchen asked in a low voice, "Is there anything you want?" Chapter 122. Kai shook her head silently and said, "I have the sword of Samsara, so the other equipment is dispensable. Unless it suits me very well, I don't really need it. Let's buy it for everyone first. You also need to buy a weapon, but it doesn't have to be here. We can look for it on the 3rd floor of the trading center later." That's right, Long Houchen was in a shortage of weapons again. Speaking of which, he was also depressed. Ever since he became a demon hunter, he had destroyed a lot of weapons. This time, even the rare Radiance Grade Heavy Sword, Light's Punishment, was destroyed. His Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light were also destroyed in the head-on clash with a bow. They were still being nurtured in Yiting's body, and could not be used at least for the time being. As a result, Long Houchen was in the awkward situation of having no weapons to use. Now that their spiritual energy levels had increased to 5,000, their next goal was to defeat the Red Skeleton. How could Long Houchen fight without a weapon? Therefore, he needed to buy a heavy sword the most now. Of course, one was not a big deal. Don't forget that he was the Punishment Knight. At this moment, the light in the auction hall became even dimmer until the whole place was pitch black. The previously noisy auction hall suddenly quietened down. Those who could participate in this heavyweight auction were not ordinary people, so they were naturally familiar with the rules here. With a swoosh, a beam of light shot down from the sky and landed on the display stage in front. A girl in a bright red dress was standing there. In terms of appearance, this girl wasn't as beautiful as Kai, but she had the charm of a mature woman. Looking at the smile on her face, it was easy to give people the feeling of a spring breeze blowing on their faces. What was even more peculiar was that when everyone looked at her, they could even feel that she was looking at them. Hello, distinguished guest. Welcome to this month's VIP auction. Today we have prepared many rare and good things for all distinguished guests. I hope everyone can gain something. The pleasant voice was full of gentleness. Long Houchen could clearly hear that some of the people in the seats behind him were breathing heavily. This woman should be a rare psychic power user. Her ability is of the spiritual attribute, Long Houchen whispered to Kai beside him. On the other side, Sima Xian chuckled and said, "It's rare to see someone who specializes in the spirit attribute, and even rarer to see someone as beautiful as her. The Sanctuary Alliance auction house has really put in a lot of effort." Han Yu touched his arm and teased, "What's wrong? Was he moved? You can try to pursue it." Sima Xian shook his head forcefully and said, "No, this kind of woman is not my type." This time, even Long Houchen was a little curious. He couldn't help but ask, "Sima, what kind of girls do you like?" Sima Xian laughed awkwardly and said, "I like girls with long hair who are as pure as a little white flower." When he said this, everyone else couldn't help but burst out laughing. Qin Inger didn't give him any face and laughed quietly. "Why do I feel like you're talking about Brother Yu Yao? I didn't think that Sima, seeing how fat you are, would actually have this kind of hobby." "Bullshit, Lousy doesn't like men." Because he was a little excited, his voice was a bit louder. Immediately, he attracted a lot of disdainful gazes. Luckily, the auction hall was very dark, so the surrounding people couldn't see what was going on. The red-dressed beauty on the stage acted as if nothing had happened and continued to introduce herself. "If you're a frequent guest of our VIP auction house, then you'll definitely recognize me. However, I still need to introduce myself so that more new friends can get familiar with me. I'm called Endless Night, the head auctioneer of the Sanctuary Alliance auction house. Today's auction will be hosted by me. In order to not let the esteemed guests wait too long, let's invite the first auction item." As she said this, she had already retreated to the side of the stage. Two white-dressed girls pushed a cart onto the stage. At this moment, a staff member dressed in white came from the other side to Endless Night's side and whispered a few words into her ear. Endless Night's charming face revealed a trace of shock, but she quickly calmed down and nodded her head. The first auction item had already been pushed onto the stage. Endless Night walked to the side of the cart and said with a face full of regret, "I'm extremely sorry. I have to inform the esteemed guests of a very sorry news. I'm afraid our first auction item will have to be delayed. It will be participating in today's auction item as the second auction item. The following auction items will also be pushed back in order." As soon as these words were said, the auction house immediately became noisy again. But the people who could come here were all people of considerable status. Their manners weren't bad, at least no one cursed out. The regret on Endless Night's charming face turned into a smile. "While I'm sorry, I also have to congratulate the esteemed guests here. Because the first auction item that we're about to switch to is very likely to be the auction item with the highest price today. Moreover, it's a rare treasure. Even I'm moved by it. If any esteemed guest is willing to buy it and give it to me, maybe Endless Night will devote her life to you." She was originally beautiful, and even more so, she had a natural charm and charisma. As soon as these words were said, at least 80% of the males present felt their mouths go dry. There were even some who couldn't help but shout out that they wanted to buy the first auction item and give it to her. Of course, these words were just words. Those who frequently participated in the VIP auction all knew what kind of status this Endless Night had. Don't look at how young she was. In the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House, her status was quite high. With her status, she actually said that she might devote her life to someone. That proved that the value of the first auction item was definitely an astronomical figure. Long Houchen sat below and secretly sighed in admiration. She really deserved to be called the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House's chief auctioneer. With just a few simple words, she was able to raise everyone's interest. And he also faintly guessed what the first auction item would be. Endless Night elegantly made a hand gesture, indicating for the assistant to push the auction cart down. I believe that everyone is very curious as to what kind of auction item we're making an exception for is. Speaking of which, I'm also very curious. Because I've only heard of this treasure, but I've never seen it before. However, I believe that everyone here, no matter if you're a professional or a wealthy merchant, you should all be very interested in it. It's equivalent to a treasure of heaven and earth. Oh no, it's an existence even more precious than a treasure of heaven and earth. Next, let us invite today's mysterious auction item number 1. Schwa. Another ray of light descended from the sky. And this time, the light was a faint gold. Those who frequently participated in auctions all knew that only the finale item would receive this kind of treatment. With Endless Night's string of words and the cooperation of the auction house, not only was this auction item number 1 mysterious, it even more so gave people a kind of extremely noble feeling. A golden cart inlaid with all kinds of gems was slowly pushed onto the stage. The one pushing the cart was no longer the 2 assistant ladies from before. Instead, it was a girl wearing a long white dress, with a head of long black hair, elegant like a fairy. Her charming face carried a trace of a faint smile, but her body seemed as if it had never been tainted by even the slightest bit of smoke and fire. And the cart she was pushing just happened to be that gorgeous. The combination of beauty and elegance instantly became the focal point of everyone's gazes. In terms of appearance, Endless Night was without a doubt a bit inferior to this white-dressed girl, but her temperament and charm made up for the lack of appearance. The 2 girls on the stage were like roses and lilies competing for beauty. Just this beauty alone made all the auctioneers feel moved. Sima Xian opened his mouth wide, his eyes lifelessly looking at the white-dressed girl. His entire person had already sunk into a state of shock. Not only him, the other general-level monster hunters' gazes also somewhat froze. Han Yu muttered, "Sima, is this the little white flower you were talking about?" "No, I can't. I'm going to die, I'm going to die." "That's right, this is the appearance of my dream lover." "Quick, Han Yu, pinch me. I'm not dreaming, right?" Han Yu ruthlessly pinched his leg. Sima Xian felt pain, but became even more excited. "It's real, it's real. No one can stop me. This girl is mine. I will definitely use all my strength to launch an offensive of love towards her." While saying this, he had already begun to rub his palms together. At this moment, Lin Xian quietly returned to this row and sat down. Seeing Sima Xian's excited appearance, he suspiciously asked, "What's wrong with Sima now?" Cherninger laughed softly, "He's in heat. He likes that little white flower on the stage." Lin Xian had a face of speechlessness as he said, "Sima, are you dreaming? Do you know who that is?" Sima Xian suspiciously looked at Lin Xian. "How am I dreaming? Could it be that we brothers are inferior to each other?" Lin Xian chuckled and said, "It's hard to say who's inferior to each other. But I can tell you for sure that this girl isn't someone who can be suppressed by status. Unless she really likes you, even if you're a 9th stage ranker, it's useless." Long Houchen coughed and said, "We'll discuss this matter after the auction ends. Let's look at the auction first. This first item should be ours, right?" Lin Xian quietly nodded his head. In this auction, the most attractive items are the first and last items. When bidding for the first item, everyone hasn't spent their money yet, so they have the most confidence. As for the last item, it's usually the best item. The reason why I placed it first is to see the auction's value and decide how much we'll spend on it today. Endless Night's ability to control the situation is extremely strong. This time, I've also invited Feng Ling to help out. Even if I don't want to sell it for a high price, he. Feng Ling this name sounds really nice. Sima Xian said very seriously. Then, he hugged Lin Xian's shoulder. Lin Xian, we're good brothers, right? What? Lin Xian looked at him vigilantly. Even if he wanted to struggle, he wouldn't be able to break free from Sima Xian's brute strength. Sima Xian said in a low voice, "Introduce me to him. In the future, you're my older brother." Seeing these two clowns whispering to each other, Long Haochen couldn't help but smile. His gaze returned to the stage. At this moment, the auction wasn't calm. Looking at the two beauties on the stage, everyone was guessing what the first item would be. Endless Night nodded towards Feng Ling. Feng Ling faintly smiled and stood to the side. Endless Night said, "Everyone must be very excited to see what this item is. Allow me to keep everyone in suspense. I'll first announce the starting price of this treasure, then I'll reveal its true appearance." The clamor of discussion couldn't help but increase by a few notches. Without a doubt, announcing the starting price first before letting everyone see the real item, this also went against the normal auction rules. However, this undoubtedly raised the curiosity of all the bidders to the extreme. Endless Night smiled. Next, this auction house's future successor, who is also our Holy Alliance auction house's #1 beauty, Miss Feng Ling will announce the starting price of this treasure. Holy Alliance auction house's successor? Hearing this, Long Haochen and the others immediately understood the meaning behind Lin Xian's word. It must be known that the Holy Alliance auction house's background was the entire Temple League. Feng Ling's red lips slightly opened and she smiled. 8 million gold coins. Boom! When this number came out, the entire audience instantly went into an uproar. Even in the Holy City's Holy Alliance auction house's VIP auction, this starting price was extremely rare. The last time it appeared, it was an epic equipment. And looking at the item on the golden cart, it clearly wasn't an ordinary weapon or equipment. Just what was it for its price to be so high? A few people who had the ability to buy it, their breathing clearly became heavy. To them, most of the time, money was just a number, while rare treasures were the most precious things in their hearts. The lights on the auction stage changed again. The two lights that originally landed on Endless Night and Feng Ling merged into one and landed on the cart. Endless Night's magical voice reverberated throughout the entire audience. If someone asks me what is the most precious thing in this world, then I will definitely answer, it's life. Yes, in this world, what is more important than our lives? No matter how much money you have, it's just a string of zeros, while our lives are the one in front. Without the one, no matter how many zeros there are, it's meaningless. Everyone knows how precious life is. If someone could make me 10 years younger, I would be willing to use all of my wealth to exchange for it. And today, this most precious treasure that this auction house has made an exception for many times, one of its special properties is that it increases one's life. Endless Night said. Feng Ling very cooperatively slowly lifted the red cloth on the cart, revealing a treasure box that was exquisitely carved out of white jade. The white jade released a faint cold air. Under the illumination of the lights, it released a somewhat enshrouded beauty. Those who knew their stuff could see that this wasn't a normal jade, but rather a genuine chilled jade. It could only be produced in the depths of 1,000 years of ice. Just this large piece of chilled jade was worth millions of gold coins. Not to mention that it was carved by a master. There were clearly 9 vivid and lifelike carvings of white jade dragons on it. Even the tiniest scales were so clear. What was even more strange was that within this chilled jade treasure box, there was a faint layer of light. Because of the cover of the jade box, the light couldn't be completely revealed. But because of this, it gave people a kind of dreamy feeling. I'll bid 8 million gold coins. No need to open the box. A powerful voice suddenly rang out. This voice came from a private room in the very front row. Endless Night's eyes revealed a trace of pleasant surprise, and he respectfully said, "Respected guest number 3, we still haven't announced what this treasure is." That powerful voice said in a deep voice, "I believe in the Sacred Alliance auction house's reputation. According to the auction rules, I can bid ahead of time. If no one bids against me, I will obtain the right to bid first." The right to bid first was the right to bid first if the price was the same. It was even the right to directly obtain this auction item. 9 million. A clear female voice rang out from another VIP room. Endless Night regretfully looked at VIP room number 3 and said, "I'm very sorry." The guest in VIP room number 5 also responded, "I must announce it." Humph. That powerful voice was clearly very dissatisfied with VIP room number 5. He angrily snorted, but there was no movement from the other side. Long Houchin and Lin Xian looked at each other and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This Sacred Alliance auction house really had good method. The auction hadn't even started and the price was already raised to a high price of 9 million. This was something he didn't expect. Endless Night continued, "If this treasure is combined with some supplementary medicine and directly consumed, for a normal person, it can extend their life by 50 years. Life is priceless. I think that just because of this point, the starting price of this item can reach 8 million. I'm sure all of you can understand. What's more, for this treasure, if it's simply eaten, it would be a waste of a heavenly treasure. On our demonic god's great road, what is the strongest creature? I think everyone can guess it's a dragon. That's right, it's a dragon. Without considering cultivation, no one can compare to a dragon in terms of innate ability. Dragons have powerful physical strength and elemental abilities. They are at the top of the food chain. Now that I've said this, I believe that everyone has already made some guesses about this treasure. That's right, our first auction item today is a real level 10 dragon's magic crystal. She wasn't wrong. A level 10 magic beast was equivalent to a human stage 9 powerhouse. However, her voice changed and Endless Night revealed a mysterious smile. A beam of light fell from the sky and once again fell on her body. A level 10 dragon's magic crystal is sold for 8 million gold. It can't be considered expensive, but it's not cheap either. Will everyone be disappointed? In that case, the honored guests will have to make a small mistake. Because this isn't a normal dragon's magic crystal. 12 million gold coins. The majestic voice from before sounded again. This time, without waiting for him to ask, a few more voices sounded. 12,500,000. 13 million. 14 million. This kind of auction could only be described as unimaginable. They hadn't even seen the item, and the price had already reached such a crazy level. This time, Endless Night acted as if he didn't hear these shouts and continued to introduce. Dragons are really too rare on the continent. Many real dragons only exist in legends. However, when they face us human stage 9 powerhouses, most of them can only bow their heads in submission. Because they aren't strong enough, normal dragons can only be stage 9 beginner. But this magic crystal that we're auctioning today, if you soak your body in the water, it can greatly increase your external spiritual energy. This kind of magic crystal can increase your external spiritual energy by as much as 100,000 spiritual energy points. Of course, not everyone can endure this kind of powerful effect. According to physique, different professions can endure from 2,000 to 20,000 spiritual energy points. External spiritual energy is different from internal spiritual energy. Us humans rely purely on cultivation. It's very hard for external spiritual energy to break through 1,000. Even a stage 9 powerhouse can't break through 10,000 easily. But this magic crystal can directly give you a physical defense comparable to a dragon's. Right now, does everyone still think that our starting price of 8 million is too high? What's more, its rarity is unprecedented. Because very few people can obtain it without suffering retaliation. But right now I can tell everyone that this dragon crystal is a gift, so there won't be any problems. As for the relationship between the dragon crystal and equipment, I don't think I need to say more. It can completely be used as the core of any epic-grade equipment. After saying so much, everyone must think that I'm purposely keeping you in suspense. Actually, it really isn't like that. Because it is truly too precious, I must introduce its greatest characteristics to all the distinguished guests. Of course, even if I have already said all this, it's only the tip of the iceberg. When its true name appears, I believe that everyone will be able to make their own judgment. Miss Feng Ling Air, please announce it. The light returned to Feng Ling Air's body. She slowly walked forward and placed her right hand on the cold jade treasure box. She slowly opened it and a dense spiritual energy immediately surged out from the treasure box. Our first auction item is Demon Emperor's main race, the heaven-defying Demon Dragon's magic crystal. This time there wasn't an uproar. Instead, the entire place was silent. Everyone's gaze fell on the fist-sized magic crystal that emitted a dense dark gold luster. It was filled with a tyrannical and earth-shattering aura. As an auction house, we have to keep the seller's identity a secret. But as a woman, I have to cheer for them. No matter who it is, to be able to bring a heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal back to our alliance, to bring it here, they are all heroes of humanity. Endless Night once again added fuel to the fire for this first auction item. In reality, even the Holy Alliance auction house didn't always have such a high-quality item in every VIP auction. There was no need to doubt the value of this heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal. According to the auction house's estimate, it was definitely worth more than 10 million gold. To those who truly needed it, it was a priceless treasure. Originally, they had planned to put on a show as the finale, but under Lin Xian's request, they had no choice but to auction it first. Endless Night had only received this information at the last moment, but he was able to immediately set off the climax of the auction. Whether it was adaptability or knowledge, he was worthy of being the Holy Alliance auction house's chief auctioneer. With the announcement of the auction starting, the bidding that was like a fierce battle began. Moreover, almost all of the people participating in the auction were from the VIP rooms in the front row. After all, at the level of 10 million gold, it wasn't something that normal people could participate in. Even if you had that much gold, you might not be willing to spend it. Long Haochen's expression was a little strange. If not for Endless Night's introduction, he actually wouldn't have known that this heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal had so many benefits. It seemed like the remaining 4 couldn't be sold. Let's not talk about anything else, we'll first soak them in them to increase everyone's external spiritual energy. He didn't think that he would accidentally obtain such benefits. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of the time when he was cultivating with his father in Odin Town. Didn't his father let him soak in the medicinal soup every day? Lin Xian. Later, think of a way to buy or find a formula that uses the heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal as the core. No problem. I'm already looking for it, and there should be results in a few days. In terms of understanding spiritual stoves, Lin Xian wasn't as good as Long Haochen, but in terms of treasures, he was much more knowledgeable than Long Haochen. The price of the heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal soared, but after it exceeded 15 million gold, the increment clearly decreased, and it kept increasing by 100,000 gold. Obviously, although these rich people who participated in the auction really wanted to obtain this treasure, they were also clear about its true value, so they were unwilling to bid too high a price. But the problem was that there were too many people who wanted to obtain this magic crystal, and almost everyone who was qualified to participate in the auction was bidding. Hence, even with the increment of 100,000 gold coins, the price quickly exceeded 18 million gold coins. This number had actually exceeded the actual price of the heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal. Of course, if you considered its rarity, this price was still acceptable. 20 million. At this moment, the person who had bid first practically roared out this price. Immediately, the entire audience fell silent. Endless Night's eyes lit up. Okay, VIP number 3 bids 20 million gold. At this price, Endless Night can't judge if it's worth it or not. But I believe that anything, as long as you like it, then it's priceless. If no other VIP guests continue to bid, then this treasure belongs to VIP number 3. Strangely, this time, she didn't try to stir up the mood of the other bidders, and instead immediately said, 20 million going once. This was Endless Night's cleverness. This was the Temple League's largest auction house. If they only looked at profit, how could they maintain such a high price? VIP guests had to be maintained, especially those who could sit in the private rooms. Seeing that the price was about right, she didn't waste any more time. 20 million going twice. 20 million going thrice. Sold. The instant the hammer fell, it also meant that the heaven-defying demon dragon's magic crystal had been sold for a high price of 20 million. This price had already exceeded Long Houchen's expectations, but Lin Xian shook his head. Han Yu doubtfully said, "There's a medicine bro, are you still not satisfied with this price?" Lin Xian sighed and said, "Time is too tight. If we had decided to auction this magic crystal a week earlier, I could have done a bit of work and advertised it ahead of time, and then put it up for auction as the finale item. It's very likely that the price would have increased." Wang Yuanyuan said, "It's about time. A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant." Sima Xian didn't say anything. He only passionately stared at Feng Ling'er on stage, all the way until she pushed the golden cart off the stage and disappeared. After the climax, the auction continued. The real first item was once again pushed onto the stage. Charm Snow Lotus. Top quality herb. 500 years. The starting price is 200,000 gold. Maybe it was because the previous auction had used up too much energy, but Endless Night's voice was a bit more lazy and concise. 210,000 gold. Lin Xian raised the number plate in his hand without hesitation. He had always been the one to decide what he needed to buy. Even Long Houchen wouldn't interfere. Not to mention, the 21st general-level monster hunters could be considered rich and overbearing. Lin Xian was even more confident. In the end, the Charm Snow Lotus was bought by Lin Xian for a low price of 350,000 gold. Maybe it was because the previous Dragon Crystal climax was too intense, but the next few items weren't sold for very high prices. Lin Xian moved his hands again and again, obtaining 3 herbs and a magical crystal of a magical beast of the 8th rank. Next, let's bring up the 7th item. This auction item was also a rare treasure. Not only was it precious, but it was also extremely rare. Among the natural crystals that contain spiritual energy, its value is second to none. Even if you just buy one and take it home, it has a lot of room for appreciation. Our item number 7 is the best spatial crystal stone, the Air Silver Crystal. Hearing the words empty silver crystal, Wang Yuanyuan suddenly sat up straight. Her gaze fervently swept over Lin Xian. Lin Xian nodded his head, indicating that he understood. The cart was lifted and the red cloth was lifted. Immediately, the originally pitch-black auction house lit up. It was unexpectedly a piece of ore the size of a person's head. Yes, it was an ore and not a crystal. This piece of empty silver crystal hadn't been polished. It was still a piece of the most primitive ore. At the same time, there were a lot of impurities on it. But it was big enough. The soft silver light gave people a kind of strange and mysterious feeling. The silver light flickered, dazzling. It seemed as if the entire auction hall space was slightly distorted because of its appearance. Empty silver crystals are known as solid spatial spiritual energy. It can be seen that the spiritual energy contained within is pure. What's more precious is that empty silver crystals have the powerful ability to absorb spatial energy to replenish their consumption. In other words, it can be used continuously. As long as you cherish it while using it, it can accompany a spatial attribute powerhouse for a lifetime. Such a large piece of hollow silver crystal ore was extremely rare. The reason why we didn't refine it into crystal is because we don't want to destroy its integrity. If any distinguished guest is lucky enough to obtain it, he or she can sculpt it according to their needs. Because this empty silver crystal is rare and large, its starting price is 2 million gold coins. This starting price wasn't low. No one knew if there were any structural cracks in the empty silver crystal. If there were, it would greatly affect its value. But the rarer an item was, the higher its value would be. It couldn't be said that the auction house's price was unreasonable. But as soon as the starting price was announced, the auction house was silent. Empty silver crystals were indeed good stuff, but there weren't many professionals with spatial spiritual energy. Even if there were, using empty silver crystals to make staffs and equipment would at most raise the equipment to the radiance grade. Of course, that was just a small piece of empty silver crystal. But even if this piece of empty silver crystal was completely cut up and embedded into a piece of equipment, it would only be a legendary grade equipment. At most, it would contain enough spatial spiritual energy and last longer, making it more durable. As a result, with the starting price of 2 million gold coins, there weren't many people who wanted it. Endless Night silently cursed in his heart. This item's price was too high. If it was priced at 1 million gold coins, how could there be such an awkward silence? It looks like no one will be able to buy it. Is there any distinguished guest who wants to bid? Empty silver crystals are very rare. Wang Yuanyuan grabbed Lin Xian's arm and shook him so hard that he almost fell apart. Hurry up and bid, hurry up and bid. Wait a bit more. No matter how anxious Wang Yuanyuan was, Lin Xian was very calm. His eyes flashed with wisdom and he wasn't in a hurry to open his mouth. Endless Night had already asked a few times, but there was still an awkward silence. He sighed in his heart. It looks like no one really needed this item today. However, on the surface she smiled sweetly. Since there aren't any distinguished guests interested in this treasure, then I can only let it be regretfully left unsold. However, I believe that there will always be people who recognize it. Sigh. Her last faint sigh immediately gave people a feeling of wanting to hug her in their arms and cherish her. At this moment, Lin Xian finally moved. He fiercely stood up from his seat and shouted, "For Miss Endless, I bid 2 million gold coins. How can we let Miss Endless' item be left unsold?" Endless Night's eyes lit up. Some of the bidders below the stage were already laughing up their sleeves. This kind of situation would happen in practically every VIP auction. Endless Night's powerful charm wasn't just for show. Especially to those new VIP auction participants, it was even more of an enticement. Look, another one fell for it. Okay, VIP number 36 bids 2 million gold coins. Thank you for your deep affection for Wei Yang. While speaking, Wei Yang bowed slightly towards Lin Xian in a timely manner. Is there any other distinguished guest who will bid a higher price? 2 million gold coins, going once, going twice, sold. In the end, Lin Xian successfully bought this enormous empty silver crystal for 2 million gold coins. Only then did Wang Yuanyuan let out a sigh of relief. However, her gaze towards Lin Xian was still fierce. She lowered her voice and said, "Brother Yu Yao, you're purposely trying to piss me off, right?" Lin Xian shot a glance at her. "If you don't understand, then keep quiet. I have money, but I'm not stupid. If I bid right off the bat, it would be strange if I didn't attract competitors. This is called strategy, do you understand?" Yuanyuan, Lin Xian did the right thing. Long Haochen said to Wang Yuanyuan in a low voice, and then gave Lin Xian a thumbs up. It had to be said that in terms of business, Lin Xian was extremely talented. Chapter 123. The auction proceeded very quickly, and Lin Xin made several bids in the later stages of the auction. He was targeting some rare herbs and some particularly practical magic crystals and magic scrolls. However, he didn't pay a lot of gold. He understood the true meaning of auctions. He could always get a bargain. This VIP auction originally had a total of 36 items. With the addition of the heaven-defying magic dragon's magic crystal, it became 37. As time passed, it was time for the last item to be auctioned. The next item to be auctioned is the last item of today's VIP auction. It is also our final treasure. Let us welcome Miss Feng Ling Air. Just like the heaven-defying magic dragon's magic crystal, a golden light descended from the sky. Feng Ling Air, dressed in a white dress, once again appeared in front of everyone. However, this time, she didn't push a cart onto the stage. Instead, she held a long box with both hands. The box was covered with a red cloth, and she slowly walked onto the stage. Although it was covered with a red velvet cloth, the size of the box could be seen. The rectangular box was about 4 feet 5 inches long and a foot wide. It looked very large. Although she was tall and slender, she was very thin. Feng Ling held it in her hands, giving off a delicate and pitiful feeling. It is a treasured sword that has been stained with the blood of countless demons. It had once created an epic and magnificent legend. The holy light once shone because of it, but the proud sword chose to seal itself after its master fell. Endless Night's sorrowful voice resounded through the entire venue. Her face clearly revealed a trace of sorrow. There wasn't a trace of artifice, as if her current emotions were completely from the bottom of her heart. This is a sword of glory, a divine sword filled with glory and legend. The owner who put this sword up for auction here has a very important request. That is, the bidder must be able to remove its seal and pay 20 million gold. Otherwise, no matter how much the bid, it will not be auctioned off. Endless Night gave a somewhat melancholic smile and said, "Speaking up to here, everyone should have already guessed what our final item for today's auction is. This isn't the first time it has appeared here, but every time, it is not auctioned off because of additional conditions. As an auctioneer and an admirer of this godly sword, I really hope that I can find a fated person for it today. If there is really a distinguished guest who can break the seal, then the auction house is willing to pay 1/3 of the total cost. As a tribute to the divine sword." Lin Xian whispered in surprise. "Fixed price auction?" Long Haochen asked, "What is a fixed price auction?" Lin Xian said, "This is an extremely rare form of auction. The price of the auction item is fixed. In other words, anyone who offers a certain price can buy it. However, the problem is that this kind of auction will have other conditions attached to it. Only when the bidder meets the conditions attached can they qualify for the auction. The auction items that could be accepted by the Holy Alliance Grand Auction House for a fixed price were definitely outstanding. I think this sword is at least at the peak of the legendary level. It's even possible." While they were talking, on the stage, Endless Night had already lifted the red cloth, revealing a simple and unadorned wooden box. The wooden box was a reddish-brown color. There weren't too many gorgeous patterns on it, only a copper edge. An ancient and unadorned aura spread out, showing that it was already very old. The auction hall had already quietened down. It seemed like many of the distinguished guests recognized this auction item. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling. "Niece Endless, how about I buy it? Although I still can't break the seal, after I buy it, I will definitely do my best to let this godly sword see the light again. How about it?" The one who spoke was precisely the bidder in VIP room number 3 with a deep voice. Endless Night's expression was mournful as she shook her head. "Apologies, I understand your intentions. However, I must see it shine again here. This is my grandfather's wish. Endless won't hide it anymore. The seller of this sword is actually me. This godly sword was once used by my grandfather's grandfather, which is also the weapon that my grandfather, Ancestor Xian, once used. Before my grandfather died, his greatest wish was to be able to break the seal on this godly sword and let its light once again shine in this world. It would be best if it could continue drinking the blood of demons, only then would it live up to the might of this godly sword. If any distinguished guest has the ability, you can come up and give it a try. The prerequisite is that you must be a class with the light attribute. As long as you can break the seal, even if you have to pay in installments, I can accept it. While speaking, Endless Night turned around and slowly opened the wooden box. Gloomy, solemn, sorrowful, deathly silent. When that heavy sword placed in the wooden box was presented in front of everyone, Long Houchen unexpectedly felt these 4 kinds of negative emotions appear. That was a completely black heavy sword. Its style was very simple and elegant. The entire sword was about 4 feet and 2 inches long. The sword hilt was 1 foot and 2 inches long and the blade was 3 feet long. The blade was 4 fingers wide. The sword hilt and blade were one, as if they were carved out of a special metal. The most peculiar thing was that the blade was very thick and edgeless. On its surface there were faint dark cloud patterns. The tip of the sword wasn't sharp, but there was actually a black bead there. It didn't emit any powerful aura, only a simple and unadorned vicissitudes. But everyone could feel that within this gloomy and solemn aura, this heavy sword contained a deep foundation. No one went up on stage, but everyone maintained their silence to show respect for this godly sword. The silence made the atmosphere even more oppressive. Those who should have tried had already tried. There was once a 9th step knight who came here for this heavy sword, trying to make it shine once more. But that 9th step knight failed. Even a 9th step knight couldn't make this godly sword shine once more. Who else was willing to go up on stage and make a fool of themselves? The sadness in Endless Night's eyes became even more intense. He faintly sighed and slowly closed the wooden box. I'm very sorry, I made everyone feel sad because of Endless Night. But I believe that one day it will find its new master. Today's auction will end here. Endless Night apologizes to all the distinguished guests. Wait a moment. At this moment, a clear voice suddenly rang out. A person slowly stood up from his seat in the front row. Miss Endless, may I ask the name of this godly sword? That clear voice slowly said. Endless Night shook her head. My apologies, distinguished guest. My grandfather once said that unless this godly sword shines once more, we cannot mention its name again. She could hear that this person's voice was very young. She only thought that the other party was curious about the godly sword. Feng Ling Er had already turned around, preparing to take this mysterious heavy sword and leave. The people participating in the VIP auction also stood up one by one, preparing to leave. The only ones who didn't move were the general level 21 monster hunters. Because the one who stood up and asked this question was their leader, Long Houchen. I'm willing to give it a try. Long Houchen's clear voice once again rang out in the auction hall. The entire audience was silent for a second. Immediately afterwards, noise accompanied Long Houchen, who had become the center of attention for tens of thousands of people, rang out. What reverberated in the auction hall the most was that one sentence, "Don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Endless Night's charming face revealed a trace of astonishment. Looking at that masked youth, she was slightly dazed. However, out of professional habit, she very well hid her current emotions and forced out a trace of a smile. Since it's like this, distinguished guest, please come up. However, can you first prove your stats? Sure. Long Houchen indifferently said. Close your eyes. He said the last 2 words to his companions. Immediately afterwards, a resplendent light suddenly blossomed from behind Long Houchen. In that instant, the entire auction hall was actually illuminated by the light. The wave of exclamations almost lifted the roof of the auction hall. That instant of golden light was simply too dazzling. The dense light attribute aura swept away the gloominess of the audience. But because the golden light was too strong, many of the people in the back row were momentarily blinded. Luckily, the golden light only flashed for a moment. Practically no one clearly saw how the golden light was emitted. Endless Night and Feng Ling didn't see it clearly either. In the instant that the resplendent golden light blossomed, they all subconsciously closed their eyes. Only the general level 21 Monster Hunters people could feel the spiritual wings released by Long Houchen. Even under the sunlight, Long Houchen's 4 wings could emit a piercing golden light, let alone in this dark place. This was also why Long Houchen had his companions close their eyes. At the same time, the release of this golden light made those who doubted him shut their mouth. Endless Night's eyes revealed an intense shock. The depths of her eyes were filled with even more shock. Her own attribute was also light. Because of this, her understanding of light was even deeper. Just now, she clearly felt the intensity of the light released by Long Houchen. Even though she didn't see how Long Houchen released the resplendent golden light, based on her judgment, this should at least be something that a rank 7 Temple Knight could do. Moreover, it was very likely that he had to activate the glorious body of light in order to condense the light attribute spiritual energy to such a high degree. But, in that instant, he was able to release the glorious body of light. Moreover, from his voice, he was only a youth. At this age, could it be that he had the strength of a powerful rank 7? Impossible. Unless, of course, he had changed his voice, and he was very old. Long Houchen had already slowly walked onto the auction stage. Those who were originally preparing to leave all stopped in their track. Right now, they were still in the process of recovering from the golden light released by Long Houchen's 4 wings. Slowly walking onto the auction stage, Long Houchen's gaze also became focused. Looking at the already closed wooden box, he asked, "Can I start?" Endless Night subconsciously asked, "May I ask your age?" Long Houchen resolutely refused without hesitation. "There's no need." Endless Night stared blankly for a moment. She very rarely met people who could refuse her. Being able to become the head auctioneer of the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House definitely wasn't because of luck. She herself was a dual attribute spirit and light profession. In terms of talent, she asked herself if she could even become a demon hunter without a problem. And she was even more confident in her own charm. "Sorry, you can start," Endless Night said in a low voice. At the same time, she also took a step back. Long Houchen slowly opened the wooden box. His gaze also fell on that heavy sword. Both of his hands simultaneously reached into the box. Seeing this action, Endless Night's expression clearly relaxed a bit. Long Houchen's action looked simple, but it was a type of respect. A respect for a weapon. Only a godly weapon could receive this kind of respect. His left hand's 4 fingers supported the sword's tip. His thumb pinched the bead at the sword's tip. If it was a normal heavy sword, this action should have pinched the entire sword's tip so that it wouldn't reveal its sharpness. And his right hand was supporting the sword's edge, not the sword's hilt. This detail looked simple, but it was exclusive to a knight. Only a true knight would know to respect a godly weapon like this. Thus, when Endless Night saw Long Houchen's action, she also had some expectations in her heart. Could it be that this person could really make the godly sword shine again? If that was the case, thinking of this, Endless Night couldn't help but recall her grandfather's words. The one who obtained the godly sword wasn't necessarily a peak expert. It was more likely that the one who obtained it was fated with it. Could it be that he was that fated person? She didn't know why, but Endless Night's heart was beating fiercely. Because she already faintly felt that it was possible. When Feng Ling, who was holding the wooden box, saw Long Houchen put his hands inside, she raised the wooden box a bit higher. She was also extremely curious as she looked at this youth in front of her. Whether it was his voice or his figure, it seemed that he wasn't that old. However, her gaze was only filled with curiosity, nothing more. Compared to her calm, elegant, and pure appearance like a little white flower, in reality, she had a fiery heart. Long Houchen, this kind of one, 8 meter tall, extremely ordinary-looking youth, didn't attract too much of her interest. He wasn't the type she liked either. On the contrary, although Endless Night looked very charming and had a very mature charm, she was actually a very conservative girl. This was what they meant by not judging a book by its cover. Towards Endless Night and Feng Ling Er's observation, Long Houchen acted as if he didn't feel it at all. His gaze fell on the godly sword in front of him. The instant he opened the wooden box, Long Houchen felt the aura it emitted. His mind was already completely attracted to this godly sword. His feeling was much more intense than the others. He could even feel a lot of changes within the godly sword. This godly sword wasn't as simple as being sealed. From a certain perspective, it was already dead. How could a weapon die? When a true godly weapon lost its soul, it would die. Long Houchen could be completely sure that this godly sword in front of him once had its own sword spirit. Sword spirits were a type of equipment spirit. What did having a equipment spirit mean? It meant that this weapon was at least an epic grade or higher existence. In other words, the godly sword in front of Long Houchen was at least an epic grade equipment a long time ago, and right now it had already lost its own soul. But it was also because of this that Long Houchen respected it even more. He could guess that when this godly sword's owner passed away, the sword spirit sealed the body of the sword. Then, it abandoned its own body, only leaving this shell in the world. And the sword spirit itself followed its owner and passed away. To be able to make a sword spirit die with it, one could imagine what kind of existence its owner was. This kind of person, this kind of sword spirit, how could he not be respected? Right now, Long Houchen's heart wasn't calm. His movements were extremely slow, afraid that he would blaspheme this godly sword. He walked out, not to obtain this godly sword, but to help it break the seal. Just like what Endless Night said, the godly sword shouldn't be covered in dust, it should once again shine. This pitch-black heavy sword, under the support of Long Houchen's two hands, slowly left the wooden box. Long Houchen's gaze was fixed on the sword from beginning to end. He didn't pour any spiritual energy into it, but only calmly looked at it. His gaze was very calm, but also very sad. Even with the mask blocking it, Endless Night could still feel the emotions emanating from Long Houchen's body. His pair of clear golden eyes couldn't be blocked by the mask. Looking at the expression in his eyes, Endless Night could even feel that his emotions seemed to be in harmony with the desolation emitted by the godly sword. Endless Night's heartbeat sped up. Before Long Houchen appeared, when everyone saw the godly sword, they all impatiently poured their spiritual energy into it, as if they wanted to subdue it or forcefully open the seal. But they all failed. But right now, Long Houchen didn't do this. He actually seemed to be communicating with the godly sword. Feng Ling put away the wooden box and stood to the side. The curiosity in her eyes became even stronger. She stole a glance at Endless Night, only to see that she was staring at the man in front of her, her eyes unblinking. Time seemed to have stopped. Those bidders who recovered their sight all sat back down, quietly looking at Long Houchen. They were all very curious whether this person could undo the seal on the godly sword. The release of the light attribute just now had truly scared quite a few people. And the more people understood the light attribute, the more shocked they were by that burst of light just now. Yiting! Long Houchen softly called out. An even more shocking scene appeared. With a flash of golden light, a golden figure suddenly appeared in front of Long Houchen. Even though the 6 wings on Yiting's back were withdrawn, her sudden appearance, as well as the rich golden light and beauty emitted from her body, still had a feeling of shocking the entire audience. Even Endless Night and Feng Ling paled in comparison to the gentle and pure light attribute on her body. Long Houchen solemnly handed the heavy sword in his hands to Yiting. Yiting could feel his intentions, and hurriedly reached out to receive it, following Long Houchen's previous actions. This is... Endless Night suddenly covered her mouth. Even with her unwavering willpower, she was somewhat unable to suppress the shock in her heart. Yiting was facing Long Haochen, which was also facing the audience. As a result, only Endless Night and Feng Ling could see her back. They could clearly see the 6 wings on Yiting's back. They could even directly feel the pure light attribute on her body. Could this be a light elemental spirit? Endless Night's shock was already at its peak. Her knowledge was extremely profound, and she also understood light elemental spirits very well. However, in her knowledge, she had never heard of a light elemental spirit being able to evolve to the point where it looked no different from a real person. Yiting received the heavy sword. The instant this heavy sword fell into her hands, the sword unexpectedly let out a slight buzzing sound. The buzzing sound wasn't loud, but it was as clear as a dragon's cry, reverberating throughout the entire auction hall. Yiting was also stunned, because she clearly felt that after holding this heavy sword, she actually felt a sense of familiarity. That heavy sword even seemed to be somewhat dependent on her. Long Haochen took a step back, clenched his right hand into a fist, and knocked it against his chest. He gave a standard knight salute towards Yiting's heavy sword. A godly sword shouldn't be covered in dust. I can feel your sorrow and pain. However, the past is still the past. If your master was still alive then, he definitely wouldn't be willing to see your sword spirit leave with him, and your brilliance continue to be covered. From the day you gained spirituality, you should have been held in the hands of a knight. Use your brilliance to cut through brambles and thorns, to eradicate evil, to fight for justice, to fight for those who need protection. Your light will inevitably return to the world. Your brilliance will inevitably make your enemies tremble in fear. Return, departed godly sword, let your brilliance once again shine upon the earth. Let the power of light sweep away all darkness. Perhaps I am not fit to be your master, but I am willing to awaken you, and let you find the most suitable master for you. Long Haochen's words were clear and impassioned, and even more so, they were filled with a bit of austere and a bit of pride. His youthful voice actually carried the sonorous sound of iron and blood. That faint smell of blood, that thick pride, all of it was displayed in these simple words. Yiting knelt down on one knee, and raised the heavy sword in her hands in front of Long Haochen. This time, Long Haochen didn't use both hands to receive it, but instead extended his right hand, and forcefully grasped the hilt of this heavy sword. An indescribable aura appeared on Long Haochen's body. The heavy sword in his hands was suddenly raised high above his head. Immediately afterwards, one could see a glaring white light explode from his hands, and instantly pour into the heavy sword. An aura of light that was even denser and purer than the one he emitted before immediately erupted like a geyser. Feng Ling and Endless Night, who were only a few feet away, could see that under the mask on Long Haochen's face, there was a dense golden light flickering on his forehead. They could faintly make out what seemed to be 9 lines of light. Wung wung. Under this glaring white light, the dark heavy sword let out a violent hum. Right in front of Long Haochen, Yiting suddenly moved. At the same time that the 6 wings on her back instantly spread out, her body rapidly shrunk, and in an instant, she was already only a foot tall, floating behind Long Haochen. She softly chanted an incantation, and circles of gentle golden ripples floated down on Long Haochen's body, causing the glaring white light on his body to become even more intense. In the name of the radiant goddess, break the seal that has been sealed for a long time. Long Haochen's resounding voice rang out once again. Suddenly, with a violent roar, the auction hall's roof unexpectedly shattered, and a brilliant golden pillar of light descended from the sky. This pillar of light looked so gentle, and even the white light that Long Haochen emitted wasn't as glaring because of its appearance. Around the pillar of light, there was even a very illusory little angel that was about the same size as Yiting revolving around the pillar of light. However, in this gentle light, everyone felt an inviolable dignity. Radiant Goddess, did he say the Radiant Goddess? Divine power? Ding! Amidst the crisp sound of something breaking, a crack first appeared on the hilt that Long Houchen was holding, and it quickly spread upwards, all the way to the round gem at the tip of the sword. Poof! All the black color completely turned into flying ash in an instant. Then, the bead at the tip of the sword released tens of thousands of rays of light, greedily and even crazily absorbing all the light elements in the air. Yes, it had awakened. After being sealed for 100 years, it had finally awakened from its deep slumber. The descending pillar of light gradually faded, but the light on the sword became more and more intense. The originally dark body of the sword had become ethereal and translucent gold, and the dull cloud patterns now looked like real clouds, while the sword was like a giant dragon traversing through the clouds. The bead at the tip of the sword seemed to have come to life, overlooking all living beings above Long Houchen's head. Still, there was no sword edge, nor was there a sword tip. But on this divine sword, there was a 6-foot sword ray emitting on its own. As the sword ray swallowed and spat, it seemed to be indestructible despite its lack of sharpness. The golden light slowly faded, or at least, the golden light that Long Houchen released was fading. He looked fondly at the divine sword that had regained its original appearance, and his heart was filled with fondness. He could clearly feel that no matter how strong the light attribute spiritual power he released, this heavy sword could easily withstand it. Especially the spiritual bead at the tip of the sword, as its splendor swallowed and spat, it even absorbed a lot of the divine power of the radiant goddess. Even though it had lost its sword spirit, this divine sword was still a legendary grade divine sword, and it was at the peak of the legendary grade. One could imagine how powerful it was when it was in its strongest form. Miss Endless, can you tell me its name now? Endless looked at the halo released by the divine sword in a daze. She didn't even notice Long Houchen's voice, and only woke up after Fong Linger's reminder. Of course you can. Its name is Arya of the Radiant Goddess. My ancestor was the temple master of the warrior temple 200 years ago, the radiant sword god Yi Wu Shang. When she said the words Arya of the Radiant Goddess, Endless knew that her biggest secret could no longer be hidden, because the reputation of this divine sword was too great. The Arya of the Radiant Goddess was known as a divine weapon that wasn't a divine weapon. 200 years ago, the Knights Templars had 2 Knight of the Seal recognized by the throne of God. However, in that generation of the 6th Great Temple, the number 1 close combat expert wasn't one of them, because, in the warrior temple, there was an existence stronger than them. This person was the radiant sword god Yi Wu Shang. Yi Wu Shang loved to use the sword since he was young. From the age of 3, he would hug the sword to sleep every night. He started learning the sword at the age of 6. At the age of 9, he used the sword to enter the spirit. His spiritual energy grew explosively, and he directly reached the strength of a Stage 3 battle master. At the age of 11, he became a great battle master. When he was 16, he had already broken through to the Stage 6 and became a battle master. This record had never been broken by anyone in the warrior temple. At the age of 29, Yi Wu Shang broke through to the Stage 9 before he was 30, becoming the youngest war god in the history of the warrior temple. When Yi Wu Shang was 47, the Demon Emperor personally led the demon army to attack the southeast stronghold where the warrior temple was located. The radiant sword god, Yi Wu Shang, who was in charge of the southeast stronghold, personally took action and fought with the demons for a day and a night. With his own strength, he killed the 7 demon gods of the demons in the southeast stronghold. Even the arrogant demon emperor was moved and called Yi Wu Shang the strongest in the Temple League in 1,000 years. In the end, the demon emperor took the initiative to retreat and gave Yi Wu Shang 3 days to rest. 3 days later, in front of the southeast stronghold, the radiant sword god, Yi Wu Shang, fought with the demon emperor. This battle lasted for a day and a night. In the end, Yi Wu Shang fell under the iron fist of the demon emperor. But his last attack also injured the demon emperor. That battle was earth-shattering. In the end, the victorious demon emperor bowed to Yi Wushang, who was still standing despite his death, and led the demon army to retreat. Since then, the 100 Years demon emperor never appeared on the battlefield against the Temple League. The sword god of a generation had become an epic legend. In the last battle, Yi Wushang originally didn't need to challenge the demon emperor because the Temple League's reinforcements had arrived, and the experts of the 6 temples had gathered. Even if the demons attacked the city with all their strength, they might not be able to take down the southeast stronghold. However, Yi Wushang insisted on fighting. He single-handedly challenged the demon emperor with his sword. His original words were, "If humans want to defeat the demons, they must first defeat themselves. I am willing to face the demon emperor as equals and fight for the dignity of humans." The glory that Yi Wushang brought to the warrior temple was similar to what the son of Samsara gave to the assassin temple. To this day, in the middle of the main hall of the warrior temple, there was still a 10-meter-tall statue of the radiant sword god. Above the statue's head hung a plaque with 4 big words written on it, "A sword in 1,000 years." The aria of the goddess of light, this divine sword, was forged by Yi Wushang himself. Yi Wushang used the sword only for specialization. From the age of 3, when he fell asleep with the sword in his arms, until he broke through to the 6th rank at the age of 16, he used a total of 5 swords. He melted these 5 swords into a furnace and constantly tempered them with his body and mind, fusing them with his spirit. He made it drink the blood of the demons and receive the essence of heaven, earth, sun, and moon. After refining 100 types of metal, the sharpness of the sword was finally formed after 30 years. On the day the sword was formed, the miracle of the goddess of light descended, and the pearl at the tip of the sword appeared. In the end, this sword was named Aria of the Goddess of Light. The sword god of light, Yi Wushang, used this sword to kill 7 demon gods in a row and fight against the demon emperor. Unfortunately, this divine sword was only refined for a year before it fell along with Yi Wushang. On that day, the whole southeast stronghold cried. The leader of the Temple League of that generation sighed with sorrow and personally mentioned in the Assassin Temple, "A sword in 1,000 years." Therefore, when Long Haochen heard the words Aria of the Goddess of Light, he was shocked. He never thought that he would be holding this legendary divine sword in his hands. Even if the divine sword was only a shell, its significance was still very great. Holding the heavy sword horizontally in front of him, Long Haochen used his hand to gently stroke the cloud patterns on the blade, which had been tempered 1,000 times. His mood was also agitated, as if he had gone to the battlefield of the past and accompanied the sword god of light Yi Wushang in battle. Under his touch, the aria of the goddess of light unexpectedly let out a joyful hum, as if it was excited for its rebirth. Holding the sword with both hands, Long Haochen handed it over to Endless Night. "Miss Endless, please keep the divine sword." Endless Night did not take it, only looked at Long Haochen with a burning gaze. "If you don't have enough gold, you can put it on credit first. I will definitely keep my word. You made the divine sword shine again, so you are its new master." Long Haochen silently shook his head. "No, using money to measure this divine sword is blasphemy. Using money to measure this divine sword is a blasphemy to it. I only hope that it can shine again. This divine sword's significance is too great. It can no longer be described as precious. It should belong to you or the warrior temple." Endless Night let out a light sigh. "Do you think there's anyone else who can pick up this divine sword? The moment you unsealed it, you were already its new master. The divine sword has a spirit. Even if the sword spirit isn't here, it definitely isn't something an ordinary person like me can use." While saying this, she raised her slender white hand and lightly touched the sword's blade. The instant her fingers touched the sword's blade, an intense hum immediately rang out. Not only was Endless Night's hand bounced back, her entire body was pushed back by a dense light attribute energy. Long Haochen stared blankly, the divine sword has a spirit. As expected, the divine sword has a spirit. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on the sword's hilt. How could he not like this divine sword? What shocked his body and mind even more was that this divine sword contained the radiant sword god's spirit. Endless Night reluctantly looked at the aria of the goddess of light and softly said, "Can you tell me your name?" Long Houchen silently nodded his head. "I'm called Long Houchen. I'm General Level Number 21 Monster Hunters Group Leader." His voice was restrained by spiritual energy, so only Endless Night could hear it. Endless Night pointed behind him. "Hurry up and leave. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely pay you a visit." Yes, Long Houchen already had no choice but to leave. The appearance of the aria of the goddess of light had caused the bidders to go crazy. After a short period of sluggishness, the entire auction house had already become somewhat chaotic. The doors to the VIP rooms had already opened and people walked out. All of their gazes were fervently looking at the divine sword in Long Houchen's hand. There were even people who directly called out an astronomical price. Right when Long Houchen was about to put away the aria of the goddess of light and leave, his thoughts moved. A golden light flashed in his hand, and the divine sword had already turned into a golden light that melted into his right hand. In the next moment, Long Houchen's body flashed and he had already left the auction hall through the back door. The bidders couldn't take it anymore, especially those people in the VIP rooms. Among them, an expert took a step forward and climbed onto the auction stage. His tyrannical aura made the entire auction stage creak. However, before he could even open his mouth, suddenly, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly surged forth from all directions. The expert who had climbed onto the auction stage was already at the 8th stage, but facing this pressure, his expression changed greatly and he leapt off the stage. A low voice resounded throughout the entire auction hall. "Who wants to challenge the Alliance's prestige? This is a fair auction, not a place to forcefully plunder. Today's auction has already ended, you can all leave. If you act rashly again, you will be killed without question." Chapter 124. In the face of absolute strength, all delusions turned into nothingness. The auction hall, which had been blasted open by the power of light, instantly quieted down. The bidders dejectedly quickly left. No one dared to continue staying, even though the final interlude somewhat ruined the atmosphere. But without a doubt, after today's auction, the Holy Alliance auction house's reputation would definitely rise to another level. The first item was the heaven-defying Magic Dragon's magic crystal. But, compared to the finale, the aria of the Radiant Goddess, what did it count for? Perhaps the aria of the Radiant Goddess, which was only a legendary equipment, might not be as useful as the Dragon Crystal, but its fame was far from what the Dragon Crystal could compare to. Being recognized by this divine sword as its master, let alone other things, one would at least become an esteemed guest of the Warrior Temple. Endless Night and Feng Linger were the last to leave the auction hall. Endless Night let Feng Linger go back to rest first, while she went to the door of a room on the 2nd floor. Raising her hand, she lightly knocked on the door twice. "Sir, it's me. Come in." A low voice sounded. It was the one who had previously shocked the entire audience. "Yes." Endless Night pushed open the door and entered. In the luxurious room, a person stood with his back facing the door. This person was tall and wore black clothes. He didn't turn around because of Endless Night's arrival. "You did very well. Thank you." The low voice seemed to be a bit sentimental. Endless Night lightly shook his head, but his tears flowed out. "I should be the one thanking you, sir. It was your guidance that allowed Ancestor Xian's divine weapon to reappear in the world. He told me that he's called Long Houchen. Yes. He will let the divine sword shine again. He might even surpass Ancestor Ling Xian." "Ah," the black-clothed person faintly said, "you'll see it in the future. He only used 15 years to break through to the 6th stage, a year earlier than Ancestor Ling Xian. In the future, all of the Alliance's records might be broken because of him. Long Houchen didn't know that there was an existence behind this auction. After leaving the Holy Alliance auction house, he immediately took off his mask. Naturally, he wasn't afraid of people recognizing him as the youth who had previously obtained the aria of the Radiant Goddess's recognition. Soon, the 21st General Level Monster Hunters walked out of the auction hall. Guild leader Yu. Lin Xin rushed forward excitedly. Just as he was about to say something, however, he was stopped by Long Houchen. We'll talk about it when we get back. Long Houchen waved to his companions, and they quickly left, heading straight for the Monster Hunters Villa district. It could be said that the harvest this time was full of surprises. Not only did Wang Yuan obtain the empty silver crystal that she had been dreaming of, but Lin Xin also obtained a lot of good items at a good price. Their total expenditure of gold coins was not much. Most importantly, Long Houchen had removed the seal on the divine sword, the aria of the Goddess of Light, and made it recognize him as its master. Even if they did not consider the origin and spiritual symbolism of this sword, just the fact that it was a legendary level weapon was enough to make them overjoyed. As the soul of the team, Long Houchen had such a weapon, which would enhance the combat power of the entire team. Back in the villa, Lin Xin couldn't wait to shout, "Boss, let us see your divine sword." Long Houchen nodded and extended his right hand. Everyone was surprised to see that Long Houchen's right hand was completely golden, as if he was wearing a glove, and the glove was a perfect fit for his palm. When he opened his palm, a small light golden crystal appeared in his palm. Wasn't it the spiritual pearl on the tip of the aria of the Goddess of Light? Long Houchen said, "This divine sword can't be kept in the eternal melody. This seems to be its pride. However, it can be automatically shaped in my hand. I can feel its power." As he spoke, he raised his right hand, and with a flash of golden light, the dazzling aria of the Goddess of Light appeared again. In terms of appearance, this divine sword was not as dazzling as Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. However, the light it emitted made up for this deficiency. The front of the blade was a terrifying sword ray that was 6 feet long. Even the width of the blade itself was reduced to 1 foot because of the sword rays on both sides. Without a doubt, if such a divine sword appeared on the battlefield, it would simply be a killing machine. Long Houchen looked at the heavy sword in his hand lovingly. He loved it so much that he was even more excited than when he had obtained Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. He had obtained Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light through tests, and it could be said that he had conquered them. However, this divine sword had acknowledged him. Moreover, Long Houchen valued the glory that this divine sword had once obtained. In his heart, this was a form of motivation for him. "I will never let you be covered in dust. I will let you follow me, just like how I followed the sword god of light, Senior Yi Wushang, in the glorious continent." As if it understood Long Houchen's words, the aria of the Goddess of Light once again made a slight hum. The golden light converged and stuck to Long Houchen's right hand again, dyeing his palm gold. Long Houchen turned around and said to his companions, "Let's take a break today. Tomorrow, we will go to the Monster Hunters mission to level up. Then, we will replenish everyone's legendary equipment as soon as possible. After entering the Tower of Eternity, we will continue our journey." In a simple sentence, he had already made the arrangements for the future. First, they would be promoted to general-level monster hunters. Then, they could enter the 3rd floor of the Monster Hunters Trading Center to purchase legendary equipment. After changing into new equipment, they would enter the Tower of Eternity to train and break in. After improving the overall strength of the team, they would go to the Monster Hunters mission. Lin Xin, go to the Sanctuary Alliance Grand Auction House tomorrow and give Miss Yi Wushang a magic crystal of the heaven-defying demonic dragon. Tell her that it is a little compensation from me. Okay. Although Lin Xin was stingy, he was very clear about the account. Exchanging a dragon crystal for the aria of the goddess of light was not a loss no matter how he looked at it. The next day, Monster Hunter's Mission Tower. Different levels of Monster Hunters had to receive and report on different floors of the Mission Tower. If they wanted to be promoted to a higher level of Monster Hunters, they also had to apply here and be assessed by the Mission Tower. The second floor of the Monster Hunters Mission Tower welcomed a group of young people. There were 7 of them, and they walked in with the token of general-level Monster Hunters. The staff behind the 6 counters stood up at almost the same time and looked at the young people respectfully. Since the previous Wailing Howl Cave mission went wrong, the Alliance had ruthlessly cleaned up the staff in the Monster Hunters Mission Tower. The person directly responsible for the previous mission had lost his life. Therefore, the staff here were not only more cautious, but their attitude was also much better. It was especially so on the second floor of the general-level Monster Hunters Mission Tower. "Excuse me, what procedures do we need to go through to be promoted to general-level Monster Hunters?" The one walking at the front of the group of young people was extremely handsome. His eyebrows were like a painting, and his long black hair was scattered over his shoulders. However, he had a pair of clear golden eyes. Even if it was just a glance, his image would be easily imprinted in people's hearts. Without a doubt, the young man who asked was Long Houchen, and the people beside him were the general-level number 21 Monster Hunters. Long Houchen directly asked the staff behind the exploration mission counter. There were only 6 counters and 6 staff. Promoted to general level? The staff was slightly taken aback before he replied, "Esteemed Monster Hunter, to be promoted to general level, the cultivation of every member has to be at the 6th order, and they have to pay 100,000 merit points. Are you sure?" Long Houchen nodded and said, "I'm sure. However, what is the promotion test?" The staff member said very patiently, "Due to the difficulty of the missions the demon hunt squads receive every time they rise in rank, the Alliance, in order to protect the safety of the demon hunters, has conducted a certain assessment when they rise in rank. Only by passing the assessment and truly having the ability to receive higher-level missions can a squad complete their promotion. Of course, the merit points for the promotion only need to be paid once. Even if you can't pass the test, you can still try again when your strength has increased." Long Houchen nodded and said, "All right, then we need to accept the promotion test to general-level Monster Hunters." Requiring a test to complete the promotion test was the Alliance's attitude towards Monster Hunters, so they naturally had to cooperate. Monster Hunters were engaged in high-risk missions. Without sufficient strength, they would only be sending themselves to death. "All right, then please wait for a moment. Please pay 100,000 merit points first." Without Long Houchen's reminder, Lin Xian quickly stepped forward and exchanged 100,000 merit points with the staff member. The staff member took out a form for Long Houchen to fill in. He then quickly left to inform the examiners. The form that needed to be filled in was very simple. It was the name and strength of all the members of the team. Number of the original Monster Hunters. Long Houchen filled in the following. Number 21 General-Level Monster Hunters. Leader. Long Houchen, Rank 6 Radiance Guardian Knight, Inner Spiritual Energy of 7,000. Vice Leader. Kair, Rank 6 Stealth, Inner Spiritual Energy of 5,000. Member. Wang Yuan, Rank 6 Battlemaster, Inner Spiritual Energy of 5,000. Member. Sima Xian, Rank 6 Cardinal, Inner Spiritual Energy of 5,000. Member. Lin Xian, Rank 6 Archmage, Inner Spiritual Energy of 5,000. Member. Chen Inger, Rank 6 Illusory Beast Master, Inner Spiritual Energy of 5,000. Leader. Long Houchen Retainer Knight. Han Yu, Rank 6 Radiance Guardian Knight, Inner Spiritual Energy of 5,000. When he filled in Sima Xian as a cardinal, Long Houchen's pen subconsciously paused. He turned his head to look at the violent version of the cardinal and shook his head helplessly. The staff member did not leave for long. After a while, He returned and took the form that Long Houchen had filled in. With just a glance, he cried out involuntarily, "You guys are General Level 21 monster hunters?" Long Houchen asked doubtfully, "Why? Is there a problem?" "No, no." The staff member clearly stuttered when he spoke. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. So it turned out that they were the ones who had caused the great purge in the mission tower. However, why did they look so young? Not to mention the martial level, according to their age, it would be very lucky to be able to become general-level monster hunters. However, due to the prestige of the general level 21 monster hunters, the staff member did not even dare to ask. He respectfully said, "Everyone, please follow me to the Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field. I have already informed the Monster Hunters Investigation Team. Your assessment will be carried out in the Warrior Temple's trial field." "Alright, thank you." The Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field was not far from the Monster Hunters mission tower. Soon, everyone was led to the trial field by the staff member. The Alliance's service to the monster hunters was indeed excellent. The people in charge of the assessment were already waiting there. Moreover, there were 6 of them. Looking at their attire, they were from each of the 6 major temples. All of them looked to be in their 30s or 40s. Seeing Long Houchen's group of 7 walk into the trial field under the guidance of the staff member, the 6 examiners in charge of the assessment couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Their eyes were filled with shock. They were too young. Could it be that they had made a mistake when advancing from soldier to general? However, when the staff member handed the form that Long Houchen had filled out previously to the night examiner, they understood that there was no mistake. They were here to take the martial level monster hunters assessment. However, how old were they? The oldest among them didn't even seem to be 25 years old. The staff member from the Monster Hunters Mission Tower quickly retreated to the side after handing over the form. He also had to play the role of a supervisor. Although they were puzzled, the examiners didn't say anything. After all, Long Houchen had filled out the form very clearly. According to the cultivation level that he had filled out, these young people indeed had the strength to take the martial level assessment. Long Houchen strode forward and arrived in front of the 6 examiners. He placed his right fist across his chest and performed a standard knight salute. "Examiners, General Level Number 21 Monster Hunters Team Leader Long Houchen has led the entire team to report for duty. Please take the assessment." The knight examiner returned the knight salute and said, "Hello, I am the knight examiner for this assessment. Monster hunters have to go through our assessment to advance from the general level to the martial level. The assessment is as follows. First, we will test if your spiritual power is up to standard. After that, we will test your strength. Everyone must pass the assessment in order for the team to advance. Are you ready?" Long Houchen said respectfully, "Examiner, all members of General Level Number 21 Monster Hunters are ready." The knight examiner nodded and said, "Good. Then, let's start with the spiritual power assessment. If it is as you have filled out and everyone has reached the 6th level, then you will be assessed one by one." "Yes." The others all walked forward and lined up in front of the examiners. Every examiner handed them a crystal ball to test their inner spiritual power, and they were required to release their spiritual wings during the inner spiritual power test. This was to avoid cheating. After all, some spiritual medicine could temporarily increase the spiritual power limit, but spiritual wings that represented the 6th level couldn't be faked. Under the slightly shocked gazes of the examiners, the next moment, 8 pairs of spiritual wings suddenly spread out from the back of the young man from General Level Number 21 Monster Hunters. The dense spiritual power fluctuations of various elements instantly caused the air in the warrior temple to fluctuate violently. The other examiners were a little better. Although the young people in front of them were not very old, since they dared to come for the assessment, they must have some background. However, the knight examiner was really shocked. Han Yu's spiritual wings were very normal. They were just slightly bigger than the spiritual wings of an ordinary 6th-level knight, which showed that he was quite talented. However, when Long Houchen's 4 shining wings appeared, the examiner was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a moment. What kind of spiritual wings were these? As a high-level knight, he had seen countless spiritual wings, but this was the first time he had seen such strange 4 wings. The numbers on the crystal ball in Long Houchen's hand became more and more intense. Finally, it stopped at the number 7,316. It seemed that he had held back when filling out the form. The other examiners also noticed the situation here. These 4 wings were really too rare. The knight examiner recovered with great difficulty. Long Houchen, what's up with your spiritual wings? Long Houchen said loudly, Examiner, I don't know either. Maybe it's a mutation of spiritual power. The red-robed bishop beside him couldn't help but say, Examiner, our leader is very talented. He's naturally different from ordinary people. Talented? The corner of the examiner's mouth twitched a little. This innate talent was a little too powerful. Moreover, he had to report such a strange situation. Please wait for a moment. Because of the special nature of your spiritual wings, the others can take the assessment first. I need to report your situation to the Alliance. Long Houchen was also a little helpless. However, he couldn't adjust his spiritual wings. When he released them, 4 wings would definitely appear. All right. The knight examiner left in a hurry. The other examiners were also very curious. However, the assessment still had to continue. The knight examiner left for the time being. Long Houchen and Han Yu could only watch from the sidelines. According to the order, the first to take the assessment was Wang Yuanyuan. The others temporarily left the trial grounds, leaving only Wang Yuanyuan and the warrior temple examiner. This warrior examiner had a sturdy body. His plate armor made him look even more sturdy. With a shield in his left hand and a heavy sword in his right, he didn't look down on Wang Yuanyuan at all. Demon hunters were different from ordinary professionals. At the same rank, a demon hunter could deal with at least 2 or 3 ordinary professionals. Although Wang Yuanyuan was very young, this examiner was still very cautious. Are you ready? The warrior examiner asked Wang Yuanyuan. Wang Yuanyuan said, Please wait a moment. Her spatial protection armor was neatly worn. Looking at this armor, even the examiner was very envious. She was only rank 6, but she was wearing a Radiance-grade equipment. Looking at the examiner, he was wearing a Spirit-grade armor. Bang! The Divine Soul shield crashed to the ground, giving the warrior examiner a shock. This terrifying shield was even taller than Wang Yuanyuan. It was thick and solid, and it was filled with a domineering aura that spread out along with its appearance. Another Radiance-grade equipment? The warrior examiner's heart twitched again. It was really good to be a demon hunter. As Wang Yuanyuan inserted the 3 void silver crystals into her divine soul shield, she asked the examiner, Examiner, how do I pass the test? The examiner's face was a little bitter. We examiners are all rank 6, rank 5. You must defeat us to pass the assessment. Because of the shock of Long Houchen's 4 wings, the examiner forgot to explain the assessment content. Rank 6, rank 5 was about the standard of an internal spiritual energy of more than 6,600. Oh, then I'm ready. Wang Yuanyuan nodded. Their conversation was heard by the others standing at the side. Sima Xian said, Rank 6, rank 5, there's no pressure at all. Long Houchen glared at him, and he shut up. However, the examiners at the side did not look so good. They thought to themselves, Aren't your equipment better? The difference in spiritual energy is not something that can be made up for with equipment. Just as their emotions were fluctuating, the assessment in the field had already begun. Oh no, to be precise, it was already over. Silver light flashed. Boom. Over, yes, from the beginning to the end, Wang Yuanyuan had only launched 1 attack. Oh, she had also tested her spiritual stove ability. Her attack was very simple. The space door and spiritual stove teleported instantly. Then, she appeared behind the warrior examiner, who was also a battle master, and brazenly fired the air-splitting cannon. The warrior examiner only had time to turn around and subconsciously use his shield to block. In the next moment, the shield shattered and he was sent flying. He was directly blasted 20 meters away and fiercely smashed into the ground, plowing a ravine on the ground of the warrior trial grounds. The battle was over. Oh no, the assessment was over. Wang Yuanyuan was also very surprised by the result of the battle. She muttered, "The spiritual stove is really useful." The other 4 examiners standing at the side were instantly petrified. What was going on? Just for a moment? Just now, that female warrior used teleportation? A warrior who could teleport? Han Yu's very kind healing technique landed on the warrior temple examiner's body. In fact, the difference in strength between Wang Yuanyuan and this warrior examiner was not as big as it appeared. However, the effect of the space door and spiritual stove was really too big. Not only did it complete the teleportation, it also almost perfectly concealed Wang Yuanyuan's own spiritual energy fluctuations during the teleportation process. If the warrior examiner had not subconsciously felt the danger and turned around, the air-splitting cannon would have directly bombarded him. Following the increase in her own strength, Wang Yuanyuan also began to unleash the power of the divine giant soul shield more and more. The air-splitting cannon itself was a powerful skill of the divine giant soul shield. Caught off guard, even if this warrior examiner's internal spiritual energy was slightly higher than Wang Yuanyuan's, he still could not withstand it, which was why he suffered such a big loss. Of course, it was not to the extent of serious injuries. However, this was under the condition that Wang Yuanyuan did not chase after him. Crawling up from the ground with a face full of dirt and grime, this warrior examiner didn't even have the nerve to look at Wang Yuanyuan again. He only said, "You passed the test." Then he left with his tail between his legs. Wang Yuanyuan returned to her companion's side and shrugged her shoulders, indicating that she had not expected the space door and spiritual stove to be so useful. Cherninger gave her a thumbs up and giggled, "Really impressive." While the 4 examiners were still in a state of shock, Kai had already slowly walked out from the general-level monster hunter's side and walked towards the center of the field. The assassin examiner's eyes instantly narrowed. He was also an experienced assassin. From the way Kai walked out, he could tell that the person he was about to assess was not a weakling. Moreover, from the way she had filled out the form, she was the vice leader. The other 3 examiners nodded at the assassin examiner, indicating that he must definitely regain the face he had just lost. The assassin examiner narrowed his eyes, and a sharp glint flashed through his eyes. With swift and precise steps, he entered the field. A green light flashed in Kai-Er's hand, and the verdant bamboo staff that she had used before appeared in her hand. She then signaled to the assassin examiner, "I'm ready." The assassin examiner was infuriated. "She's looking down on me too much. She wants to use the verdant bamboo staff against me?" Suppressing his anger, the examiner's figure flashed, and he disappeared into thin air. This was the strongest ability of a grade 6 assassin, invisibility. Although the invisibility skill could only be used after a grade 8 assassin could completely conceal one's aura, even just making one's figure disappear could greatly increase an assassin's strength. Faced with the assassin examiner's disappearance, Kai-Er stood there motionless, as if she had been petrified. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed in the air, and 2 black streaks of light shot down from above Kai-Er's head like dragons emerging from the sea. At that moment Kai-Er moved. Her shoulders seemed to sway slightly, and immediately, the original 1 Kai-Er turned into 6. That's right, there were 6 of them, and every one of them looked so real. What was even more frightening was that the 6 Kai-Er's movements were all different, and all 6 of them stabbed at different positions in the air at the same time. Pu, piu, 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 piu. The sound of 6 collisions rang out in the air almost instantaneously. Then, the assassin examiner's figure appeared in the air. What happened next was even more shocking. The 6 Kai-ers all made different movements. Some attacked from below, while others soared into the air and attacked from above. The 6 bamboo staffs weaved a seamless net in the air. Next, the battle would be over. The assassin examiner's back was struck hard, and he fell to the ground. The 6 Kai-ers merged into one, and the bamboo staff tapped the examiner's throat. Then, they walked towards their companions. The assassin examiner didn't suffer a heavy blow, and he quickly got up. However, he didn't leave as quickly as the warrior examiner. Instead, he asked anxiously, "How can you split into 6? Aren't we 6th-grade lurkers only able to split into 3 at most? And it should be 2 fake and 1 real, but you," Kai-er said calmly, "I don't need to teach you, and you won't be able to do it anyway." By the time she finished speaking, she had already returned to Long Houchen's side. Lin Exan said in a low voice, "How domineering!" The examiners' faces turned even uglier. As examiners of monster hunters who had risen from general rank to general rank, it was normal for them to be defeated. However, it wasn't normal for them to be defeated so quickly, and their opponents didn't even have as much spiritual power as them. "It's my turn." After the 3 melee professions had passed, it was naturally the magician's turn. Lin Xian even walked out in high spirit. The magician examiner's face didn't look so good, and his eyes were full of caution as he slowly walked into the training field. When he saw the fire crystal staff in Lin Xian's hands, his complexion became even more unsightly. A mage's equipment naturally couldn't be evaluated just by looking at it, but the almost viscous elemental fluctuations emitted from the staff was enough to tell him what kind of existence it was. And it was a high-explosive fire element. The magician examiner was thinking, "I won't be roasted, right?" As soon as Lin Xinzai said that he was ready, the magic examiner quickly cast one defensive spell after another on himself. He was a wind element magician, and a green light enveloped his body as he flew into the air with the help of his spiritual wings. In the air, wind magicians were the most agile of all magicians. Speaking of which, the examiners were really shocked. The first 2 rounds had ended so quickly mostly because of the suddenness. Wang Yuanyuan's spatial door spiritual stove and Kai-er's shadow clones were all abnormal situations. Kai-er's 3 spiritual stoves fused into one. Although the spiritual stove of Samsara was the main source of the amplification, it was still the fusion of 3 spiritual stoves after all. In addition to her innate talent of being the reincarnation saintess, she was able to split herself into 6. Moreover, one of them was even capable of attacking. Therefore, the first 2 examiners had lost somewhat unjustly. If they had focused on defense, even if Wang Yuanyuan and Kai-er could win, they would definitely have to fight. The magician examiner had learned from the previous 2 examiners, and was prepared to fight steadily to at least regain some face. Unfortunately, he encountered Lin Xian, a magician who didn't know any offensive spells. Lin Xian was elated when he saw that he was defending. He raised the fire crystal staff in his hand and seemed to be chanting a spell. Rich fire elements gathered on the fire crystal staff, giving the illusion that he was about to release a powerful spell. As a result, the magician kept casting defensive spells one after another in an attempt to block Lin Xian's first round of attacks before counterattacking. However, he didn't know that Lin Xian wasn't chanting an offensive spell at all. Instead, he was continuously injecting mana into the staff and fusing it with the fire spell. When a huge blue flame skull rose into the air and went straight for the magician examiner in the air, the only thing the examiner could do was to turn around and run. After injecting up to 5,000 spiritual energy points into the fire spell, in addition to the magic staff's own amplification of the fire spell, the shining blue flame of the heart flame that had automatically evolved after fusing with the heart flame spiritual stove and the fire eagle spiritual stove, Even a level 7 powerhouse wouldn't dare to face it head-on. Don't forget, the benefits that Lin Xian obtained in Fantasy Paradise were more than Wang Yuan. Even in the whole team, the benefits that he obtained were second to none. In the end, under Lin Xian's control, the huge fire spell skeleton stopped in midair, and the magician directly admitted defeat. However, Lin Xian neglected one thing. After injecting almost all of his spiritual energy, he couldn't control this thing anymore. In the end, the fire spell exploded in the middle of the field. The huge force of the explosion blew the magic examiner and Lin Xian away, and both of them were covered in dust. 3 consecutive victories. This undoubtedly boosted the morale of the 21st General-Level Monster Hunters team. Next, it was Sima Xian's turn. Priest, yes, a cardinal. Sima Xian's opponent was the only female examiner. When she saw Sima Xian, who was dressed in armor, walk towards the arena, a look of doubt appeared in her eyes. "This is the priest assessment," the female examiner said. Sima Xian's ball of light had not been completed yet. He held his original large staff in his hand, gestured, and said, "I am a priest. Didn't you see the form? Cardinal Sima Xian is me." Pfft. As soon as Sima Xian said this, the 21st General-Level Monster Hunters team almost laughed at the same time. Even Long Haochen couldn't help but laugh. Lin Xian said, "Cardinal? I think you're more like a red butcher." Sima Xian glared at them angrily, then gestured at the female examiner with the staff in his hand and said, "Dear examiner, it's like this. I'm a special priest. I'm a rare commandment priest. Have you heard of it?" The priest examiner looked at him in confusion. "Commandment priest? What's that?" Sima Xian said seriously, "It's the one who controls the commandments and is responsible for the internal rules of the Temple of the Priests. Well, to put it bluntly, it's a priest who focuses on combat. Why don't you do it this way? It doesn't seem fair for you to fight one-on-one. I'll launch an attack at the empty space. If you think you can withstand it, we'll continue. Otherwise, you can let me pass the assessment." As he said this, he didn't wait for the examiner to agree and raised the staff in his hand excitedly. That's right, Sima Xian's spiritual stove had also completed the synthesis. Moreover, he was also the one who suffered the most during the synthesis. He was almost turned into barbecued meat. But it was also because of this that the terrifying power of his spiritual stove was revealed. At this moment, after he raised the staff in his hand, a rich golden light instantly lit up. Then, a rich purple electric light suddenly appeared around the staff. On Sima Xian's chest, a rich purple light lit up and completely dyed the breastplate the same color. He pointed the staff to the side. Suddenly, a golden light ball flew out. This was not an ordinary light attribute light ball. There was a large amount of purple lightning surrounding the light ball. As the light ball flew, the purple lightning seemed to melt into the golden light ball and instantly turned purple gold. Then, boom, the light ball landed on the ground. Everyone seemed to feel their bodies slightly numb. On the ground to the left of the warrior training field, a large pit with a diameter of more than 3 meters appeared in front of everyone's eyes. This large pit was actually more than 3 meters deep. The terrifying attack power left everyone speechless. What was even more frightening was that at this moment, around Sima Xian's body, there were many of those purple gold light balls actually revolving around his body. There weren't many, a total of 9. Each of them was only the size of a fist. But, when he raised the staff again, one of the light balls attached to the top of the staff and grew at a shocking speed. "Okay, you pass." The female priest chose to admit defeat without hesitation. This was a priest? No matter how gentle the female examiner was, faced with this situation, she had the urge to curse. And so, the 4th assessment ended. Chapter 125. Sima Xian proudly returned to his companions, glanced at Lin Xian and said, "Brother, look at my spiritual stove of purple godly thunder, isn't it?" Lin Xian snorted and said, It's not as good as my spiritual stove of blue fire phoenix. Sima Xian surprisingly did not refute. Of course, it definitely can't be compared to your blue fire phoenix. Brother Lin, when will you introduce me to that little white flower? Let's talk about it later. Lin Xian felt that the word fire phoenix was not cool enough, so he added the word blue in front. After Sima Xian's 2 spiritual stoves were combined, he named it the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder. That was the terrifying attack that everyone saw just now. As for its magical effects, even Sima Xian himself was still practicing it. The only thing he was sure of was that his spiritual stove's explosive power was extremely strong, and it could be used continuously on the battlefield. The effect of the backlash was also continuous. If the backlash reached an extreme, it would be simple: the cardinal would become a cardinal roast pig. Several examiners gathered together, looking at the 21st general grade monster hunters as if they were looking at monsters. They were all rank 6, but why was the difference so big? They were all discerning people. They might not be able to guess the abilities that Wang Yuan and Kai used during the battle were spiritual stoves, but Lin Xian and Sima Xian's abilities were obviously different from their own attributes, especially Sima Xian's spiritual stove of purple godly thunder. As a result, apart from envy and jealousy, the examiners could only hate them. Hate the heavens for being unfair. Chen Inger excitedly walked out with Madul Piglet in her arms. It's my turn, it's my turn. Seeing her like this, the examiner from the Soul Temple didn't even come out. He smiled bitterly and said, "All right, you don't have to take the test anymore. With the strength that you just showed, even veteran commander-grade monster hunters are no match for you. You have passed the test. When our companion returns, if he has no objections, you will be promoted to general-tier monster hunters." At this point, what else was there to test? Wasn't continuing the test just asking to be humiliated? From the expression on Chen Inger's face, they could tell that this young lady had some background. With the strength of the entire team, they could be considered to be at the commander level. As for the young knight, he was the team leader, and his team members were already so fierce. How could the team leader be weak? Right at that moment, 2 people walked into the warrior temple. Both of them were wearing knight armor. One of them was the knight examiner from before. The other knight looked a little older than the examiner. He was obviously walking in front of the 2 of them as he strode into the temple. Every venue in the Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field had the ability to automatically repair itself. Therefore, the traces left in the venue from the previous assessment had almost disappeared. Examiner Knight looked at the crowd in confusion and said to the other examiners, "Didn't I tell you to test the others first? Why did you stop?" The magic examiner said impatiently, "We are all done with the assessment. You are the only one left. The others have all passed the assessment." "So fast? You've all been defeated so quickly?" the knight examiner said with a dumbfounded expression. None of the other examiners would answer such an awkward question. They rolled their eyes at him and turned their heads away. Examiner Knight recovered from the momentary shock. He thought to himself, "The Holy Knight Elder is indeed wise. Fortunately, I didn't have to do anything." Looking at them, it was obvious that they were at a disadvantage. As he thought about it, he walked in front of Long Haochen. His tone was much more polite than before. "Leader Long, I have reported your situation to the Holy Knight Elder. The Holy Knight Elder said that since you have a retainer knight, your assessment will be more difficult. You will be assessed together with your retainer Knight Elder, and it will be carried out by the Temple Knight Elder. The 2 of you will have to work together to defeat the Temple Knight Elder in order to be promoted to the general class." Long Haochen was stunned. Han Yu couldn't help but say, "Examiner, this doesn't seem fair. We are only grade 6 knights. Isn't it too much to ask us to defeat a grade 7 knight?" Examiner Knight said helplessly, "These are the words of the Holy Knight Elder. The Holy Knight Elder also told me to tell you, if you can't do it, then scram back to the furnace. When you can do it, then come back for the assessment. How could Han Yu not be familiar with his grandfather? Examiner Knight imitated Han Q's tone when he spoke. Han Yu couldn't help but look at Long Houchen speechlessly. He said in a low voice, "It seems that grandfather doesn't want us to become general-class monster hunters so early." Long Houchen smiled and said, "If that's the case, then let's give it a try. Grandmaster doesn't really understand our current strength." As he said that, he gave the grade 7 Temple Knight a standard knight's salute. The Temple Knight returned the salute. "Greetings, respected Temple Knight Elder. May I ask if you are a Mithril Foundation Knight?" The Temple Knight shook his head and said, "No, I am working hard towards the Mithril Foundation." Hearing this, Long Houchen and Han Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Long Houchen said, "Then let's begin the assessment." The Examiner Knight looked at Long Houchen and Han Yu in surprise. He thought to himself, "These two are really going to accept the assessment?" From his point of view, Holy Knight Elder Han Q issued this order to make things difficult for them. He didn't want them to become general-class monster hunters. Judging from the Holy Knight Elder's expression, he should be very protective of them. But these two are actually going to challenge someone of a higher rank? In the hearts of most professionals, challenging someone of a higher rank is an impossible task. The difference in rank is also a huge difference in strength. It's almost impossible to complete a higher rank challenge. It's the same even if it's 2 against 1. From grade 6 to grade 7, it's a qualitative change. The Temple Knight didn't say anything. He nodded and said very politely, "Leader Long, please." As he said that, he led the way into the field. Hearing the Temple Knight's friendly tone, Long Houchen and Han Yu followed him into the field and asked, "Senior, do you know me?" The Temple Knight smiled and said, "I've heard from my colleagues about Leader Long's miraculous deeds on the battlefield. At the same time, I admire Leader Long's strength. You are a true hero." Long Houchen suddenly understood. It seems that this person knows about what I did in the southern pass. However, this is obviously not a good thing for the assessment. The person has heard about what I did in the southern pass, so he won't look down on me. A grade 7 Temple Knight going all out in a battle. Just thinking about it gave me a headache. Just as Long Houchen and Han Yu were feeling a little depressed, the Temple Knight summoned his mount. A golden light flashed, and a white unicorn appeared next to him. The Temple Knight flipped onto the horse, a 2-meter-long spear already in his hand. The spear's entire body was bright gold, and it emitted a sharp brilliance. One look and you can tell that it's an extraordinary item. It should be a glory-grade equipment. Although his unicorn isn't the powerful Starlight unicorn, even an ordinary unicorn is a grade 6 mount. Long Houchen smiled bitterly and said, "You don't have to be so serious. You even summoned your mount." The Temple Knight smiled and said, "This is the respect that a hero should have. I'm not confident that I can defeat you two, so I naturally have to go all out. I'm deeply honored to be able to exchange pointers with Leader Long. You can also summon your mounts. Then we'll begin the assessment." Although he had summoned his mount ahead of time, he obviously wouldn't take advantage of Long Houchen and Han Yu. The helpless and bitter smile on his face gradually disappeared. Long Houchen's eyes revealed a serious expression. A purple light flickered on his forehead, and in the next moment, a huge figure appeared in front of him. It was Haoyue. Haoyue had evolved into a 4-headed beast. As soon as the 10-meter-long figure appeared on the battlefield, everyone was shocked. The Temple Knight's pupils contracted. He clearly felt a strong pressure. On the other side, the evil eye, which was now more than a meter in diameter, silently appeared behind Han Yu. After continuous evolution, it now had as many as 4 tentacles, gently floating around its body. It stared coldly at the Temple Knight not far away. Long Houchen tiptoed and leaped lightly, landing on Haoyue's back. He crossed his right fist in front of his chest and performed a knight's salute. He said in a deep voice, "Senior, please advise me. Haoyue's 4 heads were raised at the same time. 4 pairs of different colored eyes emitted a strong desire to fight. Before returning to the Temple of the Priests, Long Haochen left Haoyue in the Tower of Eternity to recuperate. No matter where it was, it wouldn't affect Haoyue's training. After evolving its 4th head, Haoyue would easily attract attention. He couldn't bring him all the way back to the Holy City. At this moment, after Long Haochen summoned Haoyue, he clearly felt that Haoyue's desire to fight was very strong. It seemed that it had been suppressed for too long in the black and red space. This is an Earth Dragon? The Knight Examiner, who was watching the battle from afar, was sweating profusely. It wasn't that he hadn't seen an Earth Dragon before. His own mount was an Earth Dragon, but its body wasn't even half the size of Haoyue. Haoyue, who was nearly 10 meters long, was standing there at a height of more than 3 meters. At this time, Long Haochen was completely looking down on his opponent. Moreover, what kind of Earth Dragon was this? It had 4 heads. The other examiners were still depressed about their failure. At this moment, when they saw Haoyue appear, the depression in their hearts was instantly swept away. They suspected that they would not be a match for this terrifying demonic beast. Demon Hunt Squads were indeed worthy of being called Demon Hunt Squads. They were truly too powerful. The Temple Knight was also a powerhouse who had experienced hundreds of battles. After a short moment of shock, he quickly calmed down. After returning the knight's salute to Long Haochen, he shouted, "Let's begin." As he spoke, the unicorn he was riding was already speeding towards Haoyue. The strong light element caused the spiritual energy around his body to explode in an instant. It could be clearly seen that the strong holy light fire was instantly ignited on him and his unicorn. A strong oppressive force was released. The Temple Knight's right arm immediately turned a transparent gold. It was the glorious body. He had used his full strength right from the start. The examiners did not hesitate to quickly open the protective shield of the warrior temple. This was a battle between a Type 6 and Type 7 powerhouse. Furthermore, they were using mounts. Who knew what kind of damage they would cause if they did not open the protective shield? What was surprising was that Han Yu and his evil eye did not move. They did not have any intention of cooperating with Long Haochen. They only stood there from afar. Han Yu held his shield in his left hand and his sword in his right, silently observing the situation. No one had more confidence in Long Haochen than he did. He had witnessed Long Haochen completing the awakening ritual as a chosen with his own eyes. So what if he was a Type 7 powerhouse? Could a Temple Knight who had just entered the Type 7 realm really defeat the Type 6 Long Haochen? Haoyue didn't even need Long Haochen's instructions. At the same time that the unicorn moved, Haoyue also moved. Its thick and powerful limbs abruptly stomped on the ground, its 4 hooves flying as it charged straight at the other party. Low and resounding chants sounded out from the mouths of the 4 heads. The different glints in their eyes shone even brighter. The unicorn spread its wings and soared into the sky. Immediately after, the Temple Knight's back extended a pair of large spiritual wings. Together with the unicorn, they actually maintained a rhythm and flapped their wings. Their speed seemed to have increased by 3 times in an instant. They turned into a golden ray of light and charged towards Long Haochen, who was on Haoyue's back. The spear in the Temple Knight's hand was the tip of the golden ray of light. The distance between the 2 parties was not too far. The Temple Knight rode the unicorn and soared into the sky before diving down in an instant. The entire process was extremely fast. At this moment, Haoyue's 4 heads each released a spell. After the evolution, Haoyue didn't just have an extra head. It had evolved in all aspects, which could be seen from the spells they released. A green ray of light soared into the sky, directly affecting the Temple Knight and the unicorn, greatly reducing their speed. The Temple Knight's body shook, and the holy fire instantly doubled in strength. Only then was the green ray destroyed in the shortest time possible. Wind Binding, a level 5 wind control spell. The speed of the wind was the fastest, but the following attack was even more powerful. A huge fireball and a huge ice ball soared into the sky at the same time. These two spells were more than 2 meters in diameter. The red and blue colors soared into the sky, forming a real world of ice and fire. Moreover, the moment they soared into the sky, they locked onto the Temple Knight and his unicorn. Even the color of the air changed. The Temple Knight felt like there was an extreme heat in front of him, and a cold chill behind him. This was the true meaning of the world of ice and fire. Light spat out a golden light and directly fell on Long Houchen's body. That was a brilliant golden ball of light, landing on Long Houchen's chest. At that moment, Long Houchen felt as if the spiritual energy in his body was boiling. In his perception, his spiritual energy had increased by at least 2,000 points. Although this 2,000 points of spiritual energy came from an outsider and was incompatible with his own spiritual energy, it could be used for the next attack. Light Spirit Increasing Spell. It was a powerful level 6 light support spell. It was extremely effective in assisting other light element experts. To be able to increase 2,000 points of spiritual energy was already a shocking number. One must know, if it was a level 5 knight, his total spiritual energy was only 2,000 points. Facing the attack of the world of ice and fire, the Temple Knight did not dare to use the holy fire to take it head-on. Without a choice, he could only slightly control the speed of his charge. The spear in his hand pointed downwards, and 2 dazzling golden lights suddenly burst out. At the same time, the shield in his left hand blocked the side. 2 loud booms resounded in the sky. The unicorn clearly trembled, its eyes revealing a look of pain. Even the Temple Knight felt very uncomfortable. Although he broke through the attack of Xiao Hua and Xiao Lan, the sudden change in temperature between the world of ice and fire caused his own spiritual energy to fluctuate unstably. And at this moment, he had already rushed diagonally to the front of Long Houchen. The spear pointed forward, directly piercing towards Long Houchen's chest. Long Houchen stood on Haoyue's back, maintaining a bow stance. In his left hand, the radiant holy shield was already grasped, brazenly blocking. Just as he made his move, a golden light silently appeared behind him. Pure gold flames instantly spread on Long Houchen's body, and at the same time, a thick golden ring of light collided with the Temple Knight's attack. Everything happened very quickly. The spectators only saw Long Houchen and the Temple Knight, one attacking and one defending, complete the first collision. The Temple Knight rode his unicorn and swept over Long Houchen's head, while Long Houchen, who was in a defensive stance, took half a step back. His body shone with a golden light. It was the divine defense block. The examiners widened their eyes. A rank 6 against a rank 7, and he was safe and sound after blocking a rank 7's all-out attack? How could they know that during the course of the battle, Haoyue and Yiting played a key role in strengthening Long Houchen and weakening his opponent? Long Houchen used the knight's strongest defensive skill, the divine defense block. To be able to block an opponent's all-out attack, it meant that Long Houchen had the strength to contend with his opponent. The unicorn circled in the air and faced Long Houchen again. The Temple Knight's expression instantly became even more solemn. The moment his spear landed on the radiant holy shield, he felt as though a mountain had been shaken. Even though he was greatly weakened, he had already used the glorious body of body, so his attributes should be able to completely suppress Long Houchen, who had the same attributes as him. However, contrary to his wishes, he was shocked to find that he was the one whose attributes were being suppressed. Long Houchen's light attribute seemed to be much purer than his. Also, that thing floating behind him should be a light elemental sprite, right? Why does it look so solid? Also, it seemed like she had used a skill to block me just now. At this moment, Yiting maintained her 1-foot-tall form, quietly floating behind Long Houchen. Roar! Haoyue's 4 heads roared at the unicorn in the air at the same time. Indistinctly, a huge purple shadow appeared behind Haoyue. The shadow disappeared in a flash, and no one could see it clearly. However, it was with this moment that the unicorn in the air actually paused for a moment, then actually swayed in the air in a panic, and slowly descended to the ground. Flight restriction? Hao Yue's roar actually had the effect of flight restriction? It could be said that Long Haochen was now a veteran of hundreds of battles. How could he let go of such an opportunity? His spiritual wings boldly rushed out from his back, and with a flap of his four wings, his figure flashed, and he rushed towards the unicorn that was descending. In his right hand a golden light shone. For the first time, he had mastered the aria of the goddess of light and used it in battle. The huge golden sword light formed a terrifying fan-shaped golden light in the air, and directly slashed towards the temple knight. The aria of the goddess of light let out a humming sound, as if it was venting its centuries-old depression. Faced with this sudden situation, the temple knight quickly abandoned the shield in his left hand, and pressed his left palm on the unicorn's back, injecting his powerful light elemental spiritual power into the unicorn's body to help it stabilize its body. At the same time, the spear in his hand pierced out like lightning. The tip of the spear pointed at the core of Long Haochen's slash. He had actually found the tip of the aria of the goddess of light in the light screen emitted by the Azura slash. Ding! The crisp sound of a collision spread through the entire battlefield. A golden mark could clearly be seen appearing on the temple knight's armor. This was the residual power of the Azura slash. In the end, Long Haochen's attack was blocked by the temple knight. However, the temple knight's shock had only just begun. When his spear collided with the tip of the aria of the goddess of light, it naturally pierced the spiritual bead. The tip of the spear actually melted at an alarming rate. It had only been a moment since the collision, but the tip of his spear had actually melted by half a foot. Not only that, with a flash of purple light, Hao Yue actually appeared under Long Haochen out of thin air, and with a swing of his big tail, he ruthlessly whipped the unicorn and the temple knight. Not good. The temple knight screamed in his heart. He quickly grabbed the shield hanging on the saddle with his left hand, and at the same time, tapped the tip of his foot on the stirrup, and charged horizontally from the unicorn's back, colliding with Hao Yue's long tail. A shocking scene appeared. The instant Hao Yue's 4 heads and 8 eyes collided with the temple knight, all of them turned purple. Then, with a loud bang, the temple knight who had activated his shield to block the impact was actually sent flying by Hao Yue's tail. The unicorn was also hit by the aftershock, and it fell from the sky in a slanted manner to the ground. Of course, Hao Yue's huge body also fell under the influence of gravity. However, at this time, Long Haochen had already flapped his 4 wings and landed on the ground. With a flash of purple light, the falling Hao Yue appeared beside him. Although the impact of the fall caused the ground to tremble, it only stirred up a cloud of dust. This was the use of the blood contract on the battlefield. After his cultivation base had reached the 6th stage, Long Haochen and Hao Yue could teleport between each other almost instantaneously. It was very useful in a real battle. At this time, Yiting raised the staff in her hand. When Long Haochen and Hao Yue launched their attacks, she had been chanting an incantation non-stop. At this time, the incantation was completed. A total of 18 golden stars shot out. A total of 18 golden stars shot out. The first one was the slowest and was instantly caught up by the second, then the third, the fourth, all the way to the 18th. Every golden star was faster than the previous one. After a series of collisions, the speed of the golden stars instantly increased to the extreme, turning into a dazzling spear in the air, shooting straight at the paladin like a bolt of lightning. Light magic of the 6th stage, Spear of Starlight. The temple knight had no time to be surprised. His body unsteadily flapped the spiritual wings on his back, and the spear in his hand thrust forward, brazenly colliding with the Spear of Starlight. With a loud bang, the sky was filled with dazzling golden light. The temple knight let out a muffled groan as he was sent flying backwards. Fortunately, his unicorn flapped its wings in time to catch his falling body. However, the Temple Knight's face had already turned somewhat pale from the repeated blows he had received. With a flash of golden light, Long Houchen had once again appeared in front of him. This time, the aria of the Goddess of Light changed from a slash to a stab. The moment the sword stabbed out, the enormous sword light emitted by the aria of the Goddess of Light suddenly retracted, and the soul pearl at the tip of the sword exploded with a blinding light. Under Long Houchen's astonished senses, a sharp sword light pierced through the sword, striking the Temple Knight's raised spear first. The incomparably sharp sword intent caused the Temple Knight and his unicorn to tremble violently. In the next moment, the aria of the Goddess of Light collided with his spear. With an ear-piercing explosion, the spear in the Temple Knight's hand turned into specks of golden light and shattered just like that. The Shura stab's momentum did not falter, and it pointed straight at his breastplate. The Temple Knight only felt a sharp sword intent instantly locking onto his body, making him not dare to move in the slightest. It was as if his body would shatter like the spear before if he moved even a little. Not only was the Temple Knight's eyes filled with disbelief, but even Long Houchen himself was the same. He did not expect that he could actually defeat the level 7 Temple Knight, and the whole process had been so short. This also caused his subsequent series of attacks to stop. The golden light retracted, and the aria of the Goddess of Light attached itself to Long Houchen's right hand in an excited buzz. Long Houchen said apologetically, "I'm sorry for destroying your weapon." The Temple Knight laughed bitterly. "You should be the disciplinary knight, right? What a strong explosive force. I didn't lose unjustly. You have a spiritual stove, and it must be an evolved light elemental spiritual stove. Coupled with the suppression of your mount and your high explosive strength, you won. As expected of the hero who fought against the level 8 moon demon in the southern pass." The two landed back on the ground. The Temple Knight gave Long Houchen a knight's salute and said, "I will immediately report to Lord Saint Knight. You can continue to complete the commander-level monster hunter's registration. It was an honor to fight you." After saying this, he sent the unicorn back, turned around, and strode away. Long Houchen subconsciously raised his right hand to look. He understood that the aria of the Goddess of Light had a lot to do with him winning so easily. This was also the first time he felt that a powerful weapon could change the battlefield in an instant. Don't be fooled by the sharpness of the sword. The spiritual pearl at the tip seemed to have the effect of destroying the opponent's weapon. Furthermore, when he used the Azura thrust, the sword light and the sword intent were obviously the abilities of the sword that came with it. However, if he wanted to completely master it, he would need a certain amount of time. The examiners were now looking at Long Houchen with reverence in their eyes. This young knight had actually defeated a level 7 powerhouse with the strength of a level 6. Looking at the whole process of the battle, his victory seemed to be a matter of course. A powerful mount, a powerful spiritual stove, and his own formidable strength, as expected of the leader of this powerful monster hunters. With their overall strength, even among the commander-level monster hunters, they should be among the best, right? After the assessment was completed, the following process was simple. An hour later, the original commander-level monster hunters number 21 was officially renamed to Commander-level Monster Hunt 64. That's right, the number of commander-level monster hunters far exceeded the number of commander-level monster hunters. According to the staff of the mission tower, among all the monster hunters, the commander level and king level were the most numerous, followed by the overlord level, then the general level, warrior level, and legend level. The commander level, king level, and overlord level were also the mainstays of the monster hunters. The monster hunters token was changed to be made of mithril, and Long Houchen was in charge of it. From this moment on, Long Houchen and the rest had officially become a core team of the monster hunters. With the newly upgraded token, Long Houchen led his teammates out of the monster hunters' mission tower, and the first thing they did was to head to the 3rd floor of the monster hunters' trading center. The magic that the aria of the goddess of light had brought him made him realize that he had to adapt to powerful equipment through actual combat. As for advancing further, it wasn't something that could be done in a day or two. Therefore, he was prepared to spend all his remaining merit points to increase the combat power of his teammate. It's so lively. As soon as they reached the third floor of the trading center, Chen-Ing-er couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Indeed, compared to the 2 floors below, the third floor of the trading center was especially lively. Although the area was the same as the first and second floors, it was overcrowded. Almost every stall had some people gathered in front of it. The trading center's official trading platform on the third floor was surrounded by at least a few dozen people. Lin Xian said, "I've long heard that the third floor of the Monster Hunters Trading Center is the liveliest place. Now that I've seen it, it really does live up to its reputation." Sima Xian asked doubtfully, "Why?" Lin Xian said, "One reason is because there are a lot of general-tier monster hunters, and the other is that high-level monster hunters will also come down to purchase some items. Moreover, because there are a lot of general-tier monster hunters, the variety and quantity of the items they sell are also quite large. Even some king-tier monster hunters will come here to sell their items. How can it not be lively?" Long Haochen listened to Lin Xian's words and nodded. "Since that's the case, we'll stick to the old rules. Everyone will split up to look for suitable equipment, and then directly look for Lin Xian to purchase. I'll emphasize 2 points. Considering the overall increase in strength, Lin Xian, you'll be in charge. Iker and Sima Huai will purchase. Yuan, Inger and Han Yu will have priority. Yuan will have priority, followed by Han Yu. Han Yu, you'll have to buy a good sword." Everyone was convinced by Long Haochen's words. He had made such an arrangement only after considering the whole situation. Wang Yuan hadn't gone through a spiritual stove synthesis, so her gains in fantasy heaven were the smallest. Moreover, her main equipment had always been the giant soul god shield. Although she had bought that spatial silver crystal for her, considering the overall increase in strength, she still had priority in choosing a legendary equipment. Han Yu didn't have a suitable weapon. As for Long Haochen himself, he was obviously at the back. Although he hadn't given Endless Night a dragon crystal, his aria of the Radiant Goddess was equivalent to using a dragon crystal to exchange for it. Moreover, he still had glorious sacred armor and glorious sacred shield, so he didn't need to change his equipment too much. At most, he just needed a radiant tier heavy sword. Everyone dispersed. Long Haochen pulled Kai-er's hand and casually looked around the crowded third floor. What he wanted to do was to find some defensive or protective equipment for Kai. After all, Kai-er's invisibility necklace wasn't that useful anymore after she reached the 6th stage. After walking through 2 stalls, Long Haochen couldn't help but inwardly exclaim in admiration. No wonder there were so many people here. There really was a lot of good stuff. Among them, the most sold were magic crystals. Moreover, they were all magic crystals from at least level 5 magic beast. He even saw a level 8 magic crystal in one of the stalls. Using levels to describe it, it was naturally a level 8 expert from the demons. Apart from magic crystals, there were all kinds of rare materials and crystals. On the contrary, there was very little equipment. Many of the stalls didn't even have a single piece of equipment. Even if there was equipment for sale, it was only Radiant tier and Spirit Demon tier. After looking at 3 stalls, Long Haochen actually didn't see a single legendary equipment. When he came to the 4th stall, he still didn't see any trace of legendary equipment. He couldn't help but ask the stall owner, "Hello, is there any legendary equipment for sale here?" The stall owner was a middle-aged man in his 30s. He looked up at Long Haochen and Kai. Seeing that they were so young, he couldn't help but show a trace of surprise and asked, "Little brother, you guys have already advanced to the general rank at such a young age?" Long Haochen smiled faintly and said, "We were lucky. We just advanced to the commander rank." Plus, we're not young anymore. It's just that we look young. There was no helping it. Who asked them to be too young? Long Houchen didn't want to be the object of attention, so he could only say so. The stall owner chuckled and said, "Interesting. You were asking about legendary equipment just now, right? Not to mention that I don't have it here. I'm afraid you can't find more than a few on the entire third floor. Once a piece of equipment reaches the legendary grade, its preciousness is comparable to a level 9 magical beast's magical crystal. We have the most general rank monster hunters here among the monster hunters. The conditions for advancing to the king rank monster hunters are extremely harsh. Which team hasn't accumulated a lot of merit points? Once a piece of legendary equipment appears, it will immediately be bought. Not to mention, after obtaining legendary equipment from outside, which team wouldn't first satisfy their own needs? If it wasn't completely useless, who would sell it? I suggest you go directly to the official counter in the trading center to take a look. Perhaps the chances of a legendary equipment appearing is higher. However, the price will also be more expensive than us monster hunters selling it ourselves. Thank you for your guidance, big brother." As fellow monster hunters, they were generally very kind to each other. Long Houchen respectfully thanked this senior. Just as he was about to bring Kai to the trading center counter, he was stopped by the middle-aged man. Chapter 126. "Little brother, I have a pretty good piece of equipment here. See if you need it?" As he spoke, the middle-aged man tossed a small wrist guard to Long Houchen. Long Houchen was now at the 6th order, so he could sense the grade of the equipment just by sensing it. It was only a spirit-grade equipment. It felt slightly heavy in his hand. "Big brother, what's the use of this equipment?" Long Houchen asked curiously. The middle-aged man said, "It has an additional skill called absorption. Don't underestimate it just because it's only a spirit-grade equipment, but it's very useful in certain situations. It has an additional skill called absorption, which can last for up to 10 minutes by consuming 1 point of spiritual energy. It allows your hand with the wrist guard to produce an absorption effect on any smooth surface. Unless you remove it yourself or your arm is chopped off, it won't let go. Of course, every time you remove it, you'll need to consume 1 more point of spiritual energy." Long Houchen asked doubtfully, "Aren't we all grade 6 professions capable of flight? This absorption ability?" Without waiting for the stall owner to explain, Kai had already taken the wrist guard from Long Houchen's hand, nodded, and said, "We'll take this equipment. How many merit points?" The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Sure enough, there's someone who knows his stuff. Not much, just 10,000 merit points." "Okay, please wait a moment." Kai first returned the wrist guard to the stall owner, and after a while, called Lin Xian over. Without haggling over the price, she directly paid 10,000 contribution points for this wrist guard, and wore it on her left wrist. After leaving the stall, Long Houchen couldn't help but ask, "Kai, is this spirit-grade equipment really worth 10,000 merit points?" Kai smiled and said, "It might not be worth it, but it's something that money can't buy. Among equipment, it's a rare equipment. The so-called rare equipment is equipment that comes with some very special skills. This wrist guard skill isn't absorption. According to the stall owner, it should be called absolute absorption. Don't think that we can adapt to any environment just because we have the ability to fly. Most of the time, this absolute absorption ability could save lives. Let me give you a simple example. If we were in an environment where flying was prohibited or underwater, how effective would our spirit wings be? Also, when facing magic beasts, I can use absolute absorption to keep myself in the most painful position of the enemy and continuously attack them. In short, you can't miss such a good thing. You'll see its specific effects in the future." As they spoke, they arrived at the official counter on the 3rd floor of the trading center, and brought Lin Xian over. There were many people in front of the official counter, and there were also many receptionists behind the counter. Long Houchen and the other two squeezed in from the edge, and finally got a staff member to receive them. "Hello, do you have any legendary equipment for sale now? We would like to purchase some," Long Houchen said to the staff. The staff was slightly taken aback, as if shocked by his wealth. "Please wait a moment, I need to check." Soon, the staff returned. At present, there are still 2 pieces of legendary grade equipment that have not been sold or inspected. The other 2 were being examined. Would you like to have them inspected? The inspection he mentioned was for the demon hunters to inspect and evaluate the equipment before deciding whether or not to buy it. The 2 being inspected should be the other demon hunters in front of the counter. Long Houchen nodded and said, "We need to check both of them." The staff said, "Please pay the inspection fee of 20,000 merit points first. If you ultimately decide to buy these 2 pieces of equipment, the inspection fee can be included in the purchase price. If you give up on the purchase, the inspection fee is not refundable." Lin Xian couldn't accept it, shouting, "You guys are too shady. Just looking at it costs 10,000 merit points, why don't you just rob someone? Do you know how difficult it is for us to kill enemies in the demons to obtain merit points?" The staff's expression didn't change. "I'm sorry, this is the trading center's rule. Because there are many problems with legendary grade equipment, if we casually inspect it, our work will be very difficult. If you have any other questions, you can negotiate with the trading center's enforcement department." Lin Xian wanted to say something, but Long Houchen raised his hand to stop him. "Forget it, Lin Xian. Give it to him." Lin Xian had always been known for pursuing the greatest benefits, but he couldn't go against Long Houchen's words. He could only unwillingly and reluctantly hand over the 20,000 merit point. However, his eyeballs were spinning around. No one knew what he was thinking. "Please wait a moment." After receiving the 20,000 merit points, the staff's attitude immediately became even more respectful. Being willing to take out 20,000 merit points to inspect the equipment proved that he had the ability to purchase it. He immediately put away his previous contempt for them because of their young age. There were many general-grade demon hunters in the surroundings, and the commotion here attracted the attention of many people. It must be known that not every general-grade monster hunters had the courage to spend tens of thousands of gold coins to inspect legendary-grade equipment. Otherwise, there wouldn't be 2 pieces of equipment that weren't within the scope of inspection. After waiting for a full quarter of an hour, the staff returned to the counter. He was accompanied by 2 other elderly staff members. These 2 were dressed in white robes. They were at least 50 years old and had a dignified bearing. Each of them was holding a box in their hand. The staff member said to Long Houchen and the other 2, "If the 3 of you are from the same Monster Hunters team, you can enter together for inspection." "Thank you." Long Houchen and the other 2 didn't stand on ceremony. They entered the counter through the side door opened by the staff member and were led to a room at the back by the 2 elderly staff members. The room wasn't big. It seemed to be a resting place for the staff members. The 2 staff members placed the boxes in their hands on the table and made an inviting gesture. At the same time, light flashed on their bodies. 2 layers of light, 1 silver and 1 gold, spread out, blocking the aura of the outside world from the inside. This was naturally to prevent the spiritual power of the legendary grade equipment from leaking out. One of the elderly said, "You can start inspecting. The total time for the inspection of 2 pieces of equipment cannot exceed half an hour." Long Houchen gave Lin Xian a meaningful glance, and the 2 of them walked up to a box each, opening the lid on the box and slowly opening it. The lid of the box was very heavy. It seemed that the whole box was made of a special metal. When he saw the size of the 2 boxes, Long Houchen understood that the 2 legendary grade equipment should be weapons. When Long Houchen opened the box, he was hit by a strong wave of water vapor. An aqua-blue staff appeared in front of him. The staff wasn't long, only about 1.2 meters. It was crystal blue all over and couldn't be seen what material it was made of. The staff had a soft streamlined shape. From the bottom to the top, it became thinner and thinner. At the tip, there was a white snowflake, exuding a cold aura. The design of the staff was simple and smooth, but it gave people a feeling of nobility and freshness. Long Houchen carefully took it out of the box. Suddenly, he felt a wave of extremely cold aura coming from the staff into his body. The strangest thing was that the blue color on the staff dissipated into mist when he moved, revealing the pure white body inside. The blue color from before was actually the almost solidified water element, as expected of a legendary grade. This staff is called Pride of Ice and Snow. It only has 2 skills, but they are both very practical. One is water coagulation, and the other is Pride of Ice. The water coagulation skill can directly transform the magic cast by a water magician into a more powerful ice element, while Pride of Ice has an explosive effect. Any water element skill can explode through Pride of Ice and increase the combat power of the skill itself. Simply put, if an icicle pierces into the enemy's body and then activates Pride of Ice, the result can be imagined. The strength of the skill also depends on the user's strength. The requirement to use this staff is to be a water magician and have an internal spiritual energy of more than 8,000. The price is 250,000 merit points. The old man standing at the side introduced the various aspects of this legendary grade staff. Another old man's voice rang out at this moment. The fire dragon's wings are made from the bone marrow of the ancient fire dragon's wings, supplemented by many precious materials, and then nurtured by the fire dragon's soul, finally becoming this legendary treasure. Suitable for fire warriors and magicians. Increases the gathering speed of fire element by 100%. Increases the flying speed of the spiritual wings by 100%. Additional skill, Fire Dragon's Protection. Rank 7 defensive spell, Solidify. Can be used 3 times a day. The requirement to use it is to have an internal spiritual energy of more than 8,000. The price is 320,000 merit points. 1 water and 1 fire, 2 legendary grade equipment. Without a doubt, Lin Xian's luck was much better. The fire dragon wings had a total of 2 enhancements and 1 skill. It could be considered a very powerful legendary grade equipment. Lin Xian held a pair of fiery red mini-wings that were only the size of a palm in his hands. He asked the old man beside him doubtfully, "Senior, how do I use this thing?" The old man said, "Stick it close to your back and connect it with your internal spiritual energy and heart fire. Its power will be obvious. However, although you are a fire magician, do you have an internal spiritual energy of 8,000? Lin Xian shook his head helplessly and said, "My internal spiritual energy is only 5,000. Looks like I won't be able to use this thing for a while. Boss, what do we do?" The last question was naturally directed at Long Houchen. Long Houchen smiled indifferently and said, "We want both of them." The 2 old men were also startled. They looked at each other in disbelief. Long Houchen continued, "If the other legendary grade equipment is inspected by the demon hunters and not purchased, we hope that they can continue to inspect it. Lin Xian, first pay the contribution points of these 2 legendary equipment to these 2 seniors." Lin Xian looked dumbfounded at Long Houchen and said, "Boss, there's no need to be in such a hurry. This is 570,000 merit points. That's more than half of our savings. Besides, our team doesn't need an ice magic staff." Long Houchen smiled faintly and said, "Just do as I say." His prestige in the team had been built by going through fire and water, and Lin Xian had absolute trust in him. Enduring the pain, he paid the 2 legendary grade equipment to the 2 old men. The 2 old men were still very surprised. One was surprised at how young Long Houchen and the others were, and the other was naturally surprised at how rich they were. Even those veteran commander-grade demon hunt squads wouldn't have an easy time taking out more than 500,000 contribution points. One had to know that killing a rank 6 demon would usually only give 1 or 2,000 merit points. How could 500,000 merit points be so easy to accumulate? Long Houchen said to Lin Xian, "Try and see if you can use the wings of the fire dragon." Lin Xian asked doubtfully, "Didn't you say that it requires 8,000 spiritual energy points to use?" Long Houchen said, "Did you forget about your heart's flame? Your flames are different from normal magicians, so it should lower the requirements for using some equipment. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, then save your strength for later." "That's right, why didn't I think of that?" Lin Xian's eyes lit up. As he spoke, he put the mini wings that were emitting a faint golden-red glow on his back. At the same time, he urged his spiritual energy to fuse with them. A layer of blue flames suddenly rose from Lin Xian's body. Suddenly, the temperature in the room rose at an alarming rate. The two old men were shocked. They looked at each other and couldn't help but show expressions of admiration. They could naturally feel the high temperature of the flames. A faint dragon roar came from the wings of the fire dragon. The blue flames were wildly injected into them. Suddenly, the originally golden-red wings of the fire dragon gradually emitted a dark blue glow. In the process of changing, it seemed like it was about to melt. Lin Xian loosened his grip on the wings of the fire dragon and poured all of his spiritual energy into it. After a few minutes, the wings of the fire dragon suddenly flourished with splendor, the dark blue flames erupting in a flash, then abruptly receding. Lin Xian seemed to be affected by it. His spiritual wings that emitted blue flames spread out from his back and fused with the wings of the fire dragon. Instantly, Lin Xian's spiritual wings at least doubled in size. They also looked much more solid than before. One could vaguely see that the spiritual wings were densely covered with a layer of dragon scales. The dark blue wings were as eye-catching as they could be. The aura he emitted also suddenly changed. There was a faint trace of dragon's might, and the flames of his heart of flame also became thicker. So satisfying. Lin Xian let out a long moan. As expected of a good item worth 320,000 merit points. Even if I don't cultivate, my spiritual energy seems to increase faster than when I cultivate. This is too satisfying. Waha, this is really too satisfying. Seeing how he was dancing with joy, Long Houchen smiled and said, "All right, put away your spiritual wings. We should go out too. Maybe they will also gain something." As he spoke, he put the pride of ice and snow in his hand back into the box. He closed the box and kept it in the eternal melody. After emphasizing to the two old men their desire for legendary equipment, he left the room and returned to the trade center on the 3rd floor.